At the dining table inside a luxurious villa, my husband placed a cup of coffee in front of me and smiled softly. I made this one especially for you, honey. Across from me, my sister raised her cup, stared directly at me, and said, "Just drink it already. You always make everything so tense." I smiled back. Then I deliberately let my napkin fall beneath the table, bent down to pick it up, and quietly switched the two cups. Thank you for joining me today. Before we dive in, leave a quick comment. Have you ever had your instincts tell you something was wrong, even when everyone said you were imagining it? Just yes or no. I genuinely appreciate hearing from you. A quick note: some details have been fictionalized for storytelling. What matters is the message this story carries. The metallic scent hit me before I even saw the cup-sharp chemical entirely wrong. My husband, Desmond Whitfield, 32, a regional sales manager with a practiced smile that used to feel like a safe harbor, set the porcelain coffee cup before me like an offering. His hand lingered on the edge of the saucer a half beat too long. That smile didn't reach his eyes. It hadn't reached them since June. Honestly, looking back now, it probably hadn't reached them since we married 3 years ago. "I made this one especially for you, honey," he said, his voice dripping with an artificial practiced warmth. "Your absolute favorite blend." Across the expansive dining table in my sister's elegant Brentwood home, Briar Harrington leaned forward with a look of studied interest. At 31, Briar had completely perfected the art of looking deeply concerned, while quietly orchestrating absolute chaos around her. She was a senior marketing strategist at Kempton, and Ross possessed impeccable taste and had a natural talent for making me feel like the disappointing, inadequate older sister, despite my own considerable success as the marketing director at Apex Consumer Brands. Her perfectly manicured, plum-colored nails drummed once against the polished mahogany surface. "Des has become quite the skilled barista lately," she said, offering a tight, knowing smile. "Always experimenting with new brewing methods, trying to find the perfect mix." The cup sat directly before me, thin wisps of steam curling upward into the air. It was white porcelain with an elegant gold rim, the exact same registry set Briar had selected before her own engagement fell apart, long before she shifted her focus to befriending my husband instead. That smell, I knew that distinct sharp smell. My mother, Celeste Harrington, 58, and recently retired from 30 years as an elementary school librarian, gently patted my hand. "You look incredibly pale again, sweetheart. Are you feeling all right? You've been so terribly sick lately." Sick. The word hung heavily in the air like a formal accusation. My father, Vernon Harrington, 62, a retired civil engineer and structural bridge inspector, said absolutely nothing. He watched the scene with the cold, diagnostic precision he'd used to evaluate failing structures for 40 years. His own coffee cup sat completely empty at his elbow. He'd already finished his. I lifted my cup not to drink, but simply to hold it, using the heat to stop my fingers from shaking. The ceramic felt intensely warm against my palms. As the liquid shifted, the metallic scent intensified, carrying a faint, unmistakable undertone of bitter almonds buried beneath something deeply acidic. My stomach immediately clenched with pure muscle memory. "Go ahead," Desmond urged gently, his hand finding my knee underneath the table. His grip was tight, possessive. "Drink it before it gets cold." Briar raised her own cup in a mock toast. "To family," she said, her sharp eyes meeting Desmond's for a fraction of a single second. "To trust." February. We were having dinner at this exact same table. Briar had prepared her signature lasagna. I had felt completely fine until dessert, but within 20 minutes, agonizing stomach cramps doubled me over in pain. Desmond had driven me home acting so deeply concerned, so incredibly attentive. The emergency room doctor ultimately called it a simple case of food poisoning. These things happen, they said. April. An afternoon tea. Just the three of us, me, Desmond, and Briar. A little professional networking between sisters, she had called it. The dizziness started 20 minutes after I finished the Earl Grey. Then came the physical tremors and severely blurred vision. Desmond immediately canceled his important evening sales meeting to stay by my side. The doctor suggested an inner ear infection brought on by stress. They told me I simply worked too hard. June. Breakfast right here in Brentwood. Desmond made omelets while Briar gracefully set the table. That time I ended up hospitalized for 3 full days with acute gastroenteritis, severe dehydration, and a terrifying cardiac arrhythmia. The hospital ran every single diagnostic test available. Nothing conclusive came back. It was viral, they concluded. Sometimes these things just happen. How many times can you call something a coincidence before it becomes a conspiracy? 3 distinct incidents. 3 separate hospitalizations, all occurring immediately after meals where both Desmond and Briar were present. All easily dismissed as random illness, stress, or bad luck. But human bodies don't lie. Bodies keep a meticulous score. February hadn't been severe enough. April was worse, but my system recovered too quickly. June had almost worked perfectly. My heart rate dropped to a dangerous 42 beats per minute before the ER staff finally stabilized me. A very close call, the doctors had muttered, calling it a medical mystery. They weren't just making mistakes, they'd been calibrating. The realization suddenly crystallized with a terrible icy clarity. This whole timeline wasn't about making me chronically sick. This was about making me permanently dead. They had spent 6 months perfecting the exact dosage, carefully adjusting the chemical variables, and watching my physical body's responses like 2 detached scientists conducting a laboratory experiment. Test run, and now the final trial. "You're being rude, Alara." My mother's voice broke through my thoughts, carrying a gentle but firm reproach. "Your husband went to so much trouble to make that for you." Briar tilted her head, watching me closely. "You really do look remarkably pale, sis. Maybe the coffee is exactly what you need to help you feel better." Desmond's hand tightened significantly on my knee. It wasn't a gesture of comfort. It was pure physical pressure. His other hand rested right beside my saucer, his fingers rhythmically drumming a patient, steady rhythm against the wood. Waiting. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the cold, predatory calculation hidden right behind that mask of concern. Sales managers are trained to read people, identify vulnerabilities, exploit them, and close deals. I had foolishly thought I was his partner, his wife. But I had been his profitable mark all along. I was 29 years old, a highly successful marketing director, pulling in 6 figures, carrying a $750,000 life insurance policy that he had conveniently suggested we open last year. For security, he had told me. For our future. Briar watched me over the rim of her cup with eyes that perfectly matched our mother's shape, but held absolutely none of her warmth. She had always desperately wanted whatever I had. My corporate job had far more prestige. My downtown condo had a vastly better view. My husband, oh, the fleeting glance they had exchanged earlier wasn't professional networking. It wasn't friendly hospitality. It was perfectly choreographed, highly practiced, intimately familiar. They weren't trying to make me sick anymore. They had finally calibrated the lethal dose. This specific cup right here, right now, was the final calculation, the perfected formula. And they absolutely needed me to drink it right here, directly in front of reliable witnesses, my own family. People who had watched me physically decline over months, who would later shake their heads in deep sadness at my funeral and tell the mourners that she'd been so terribly sick, poor thing, her weak body just finally gave out. My fingers closed tightly around the porcelain cup's delicate handle. Desmond's eyes instantly tracked the movement like a wolf watching a wounded deer. Briar leaned forward slightly, her breath held tight in her throat, her pupils visibly dilated with anticipation. My father's empty coffee cup sat quietly at the far end of the table. He'd drunk his own blend 30 minutes ago without any issue. Only mine had been prepared special. In that frozen, terrifying second, I understood the absolute reality of my situation. If I drank from this cup, I wouldn't live to see November. But they had made one critical, fatal mistake in their grand design. Through their repeated attempts, they had inadvertently taught me how to recognize the pattern. And while they were busy calculating their final dose, I had already made a completely different plan, one they would never see coming. I dropped my napkin deliberately, gracefully, and in the 2 seconds it took me to retrieve it, I changed everything. The linen square had been in my lap, and now it was on the floor beside my chair. I bent down with a small apologetic laugh, one hand bracing against the table edge. My other hand found the base of my coffee cup and slid it 6 inches to the left while simultaneously pulling Briar's cup into its place. The porcelain made no sound against the polished wood. 2 seconds. That's all it took to turn their trap back on them. "Oh, how clumsy of me," I said, straightening with the napkin. "Sorry, everyone." Briar's eyes tracked my movement but saw nothing wrong. "No harm done," she said, her voice carrying that familiar edge of superiority. "Though you do seem distracted today." "Just tired." I smoothed the napkin back across my lap, every muscle in my body vibrating with controlled adrenaline. My phone sat in my jacket pocket, already recording the backup device I'd activated the moment I'd recognized the metallic scent. 6 months of preparation for exactly this moment. Desmond's hand returned to my knee. "You should drink your coffee, sweetheart. It'll help." I reached for the cup now sitting before me. Briar's cup, the safe one, and raised it to my lips. The coffee tasted normal. No bitterness, no metallic undertone, just expensive Colombian blend with a hint of cinnamon. I took a long sip, watching Desmond's shoulders relax fractionally. "Much better," I said. My mother smiled, relieved. My father remained silent, his engineer's eyes cataloging everything. Vernon Harrington had spent 40 years calculating load tolerances and structural integrity. He knew when something didn't add up, but he said nothing, and I couldn't risk bringing him into this. Not yet. 5 minutes of small talk. Celeste discussed her book club. Briar mentioned a new client. Desmond laughed at appropriate moments, his hand never leaving my knee, his performance flawless. I nodded and smiled and felt my phone recording every word through the fabric of my jacket. Then I stood. "I need to take this call," I said, pulling my personal phone from my purse and glancing at the dark screen as if it had buzzed. "Work emergency. I'll just be a minute." Desmond's jaw tightened. "Can it wait?" "Stratford account," I said, naming the $4.2 million contract I'd secured last month. The one that had made me indispensable at Apex Consumer Brands. The one that had probably accelerated their timeline. 2 minutes, I promise. I walked out through the foyer, my heels clicking against marble tile, and closed the front door behind me. October air hit my face cold and clean. My car sat 3 houses down. I'd parked there, deliberately creating distance. I slid into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and pulled out my actual phone, the one that mattered. Saskia Redman answered on the first ring. "Tell me you're safe," she said. No greeting, no preamble. That was Saskia, 36 years old, environmental law partner at Brennan and Associates, my study partner from law school before I'd pivoted to marketing, and the sharpest legal mind I'd ever known. "I'm outside, in my car." My hands were shaking now that no one could see them. I swapped the cups. Silence on the line. "Then you're certain it was poisoned?" Metallic scent. Bitter almonds underneath. Same smell from June. The hospital admission that had nearly killed me. The one that had finally made me start documenting everything. "Saskia. I've been logging everything for 6 months, time-stamped emails to myself, hospital records, symptom diaries with dates, the backup phone recording in my pocket. It's all admissible, right? Everything we discussed. Every piece," she confirmed. "You followed the protocol exactly. Email timestamps establish pattern. Medical records corroborate. Single-party consent in Tennessee means your recordings are legal. If this goes where I think it's going, we have enough to bury them." They taught me to be afraid of the wrong thing's storms, instead of still water strangers, instead of family. My parents had raised me to be careful crossing streets, to check locks at night, to avoid dark parking lots. No one had taught me to document my husband's coffee preparation, to photograph my sister's dinner invitations, to save every text message exchange that seemed slightly off. I'd learned that myself the hard way, starting the day I'd walked out of the hospital in June and finally Googled metallic taste arsenic poisoning. The search results had been illuminating, terrifying, clarifying. "And if she drinks it," my voice was barely a whisper. "If the cup I just switched?" "Then you do not hang up this phone," Saskia said, her voice hard as courtroom marble. "Not for a second. You keep this line open. I need to hear everything that happens." Unbroken chain of custody for the audio evidence. Do you understand? Yes. And Alara? If Breyer collapses, you call 911 immediately. You render aid. You do everything a reasonable person would do, but you do not end this call. I'll be on mute recording every word. My stomach twisted. She's my sister. She's been poisoning you for 6 months. Saskia's tone softened fractionally. I know this is impossible, but you need to be ready for what comes next. 6 months of poisoning, 1 phone call, 2 seconds that would rewrite everything. I looked up at Breyer's perfect house with its perfect landscaping and its perfect facade. Through the dining room window, I could see movement. Figures at the table. Celeste gesturing animatedly. Desmond leaning back in his chair, relaxed now that I'd drunk what he thought was the poisoned coffee. And Breyer reaching for her cup. I have to go back in, I said. I'm here, Saskia said. I'm recording. Whatever happens next, I've got you. I pocketed the phone without ending the call, took one steadying breath, and stepped out of the car. The walk back to Breyer's front door felt like miles. My heart hammered against my ribs. This is it. 6 months of planning comes down to this moment. Through the window, Breyer raised the coffee cup, my cup, the one meant for me, to her perfectly painted lips. Her hand was steady. Mine were shaking. In 3 seconds, she would take the first sip and everything they'd planned would collapse around them. I reached for the door handle as she tilted the cup back and drank. The cup was still at her lips when the trembling started. I pushed through the front door just as Breyer set the porcelain down with a sharp clink, her hand already shaking. She blinked twice rapidly as if trying to clear her vision. The color drained from her face like water from a broken glass. I don't... She gripped the edge of the table. I can't. Something's wrong. Desmond was on his feet before she finished the sentence. Not the gradual rise of someone concerned. The explosive launch of someone who knows exactly what's happening and can't believe it's happening to the wrong person. No, he said, his voice strangled. No, 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 this wasn't supposed to. He caught himself mid-sentence, jaw snapping shut, but the damage was already done. This wasn't supposed to. Not this wasn't happening, not what's wrong, this wasn't supposed to. The cup clattered from Breyer's hand, coffee spilling across the white tablecloth in a dark bloom. Her whole body convulsed once violently and she gasped. Breyer! Celeste screamed, rushing to her youngest daughter's side. Baby, what's happening? Someone call 911. I stood in the doorway, my phone in my pocket, still connected to Saskia, recording everything. Every word. Every sound. My backup phone captured the scene from a different angle. 2 independent recordings of the same moment. I've got it, I said, pulling out my visible phone. My voice was steady, clinical. Exactly what an innocent sister would sound like in a crisis. I'm calling now. Breyer tried to stand and immediately collapsed back into her chair, her legs buckling. The tremors intensified. I'd felt that same loss of muscle control in April. The way your body stops obeying commands from your brain. The terror of being trapped inside a failing machine. Desmond's panic was immediate and specific. He didn't check her pulse, didn't ask what she'd eaten, didn't suggest allergies or strokes or any of the normal explanations a husband might offer when his sister-in-law suddenly collapsed. He just stared at the coffee cup on the table, my cup, the one I was supposed to drink from, with the kind of horror that comes from watching a carefully constructed plan detonate in your hands. Help me get her to the couch, Celeste commanded, her librarian's voice cutting through chaos with practiced authority. Vernon appeared in the doorway behind me, his engineer's assessment already underway, cataloging symptoms with the same precision he'd once used to evaluate bridge cables. I stepped aside as Desmond and my father half-carried Breyer to the living room. Her head lolled against Desmond's shoulder. Drool slipped from the corner of her mouth. She was trying to speak, but the words came out garbled, slurred. I dialed 911, put it on speaker, and set the phone on the coffee table where everyone could hear. 911, what's your emergency? My sister is experiencing severe tremors and difficulty breathing after drinking coffee, I said. Clear, factual, the kind of statement that would look perfect in a police report. We need an ambulance immediately. Is this what justice looks like? Watching someone suffer from their own cruelty while your mother's world shatters? The thought arrived unbidden as I watched Celeste cradle Breyer's head, stroking her hair with shaking hands. My mother had favored Breyer for 31 years. The brilliant one. the charming one, the daughter who'd never disappointed her. And now that daughter was convulsing on a restoration hardware couch while evidence of her attempted murder played out in real time. Address, the dispatcher asked. I provided it. Breyer's perfect Brentwood address with the perfect landscaping and the perfect furniture that had hosted 3 attempted murders disguised as family brunch. What did she ingest? Coffee, I said. Just coffee. Desmond's head snapped toward me. For half a second, our eyes met, and I saw the calculation happening behind his panic. How much did I know? How much had I seen? Was I playing dumb or actually clueless? I kept my face carefully neutral. Concerned sister, nothing more. Paramedics are 3 minutes out, the dispatcher said. Stay on the line. Is she conscious? Barely, Celeste sobbed. Breyer, baby, stay with me, stay with me. Breyer's eyes rolled back. Her body went rigid back, arching off the couch in a way that made my mother scream. I'd read about this. Acute arsenic poisoning. The seizures came fast when the dose was high enough. The dose they'd perfected for me. That wasn't the cup meant for, Desmond blurted, then stopped so abruptly he bit his own tongue. Blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. The room went silent except for Breyer's labored breathing and the tinny voice of the 911 dispatcher asking if we were still there. Celeste's hand froze mid-stroke on Breyer's hair. She turned slowly her librarian's mind, the one that had organized 30 years of books by Dewey Decimal, that had taught thousands of children to read context clues, putting together a sentence that didn't make sense unless you understood what it really meant. Meant for... Her voice was very small. Desmond, what do you mean meant for? Nothing. I meant... He stumbled over words like a drunk stumbles over furniture. I just meant it's strange the coffee making her sick when she drank it all the time. You said that wasn't the cup. Celeste stood backing away from the couch, from her daughter, from her son-in-law. You said it wasn't meant for her. Vernon's hand found my shoulder, a gentle pressure, the first physical contact he'd made all morning. His fingers squeezed once. A message in engineering shorthand, I see it too. 3 hospitalizations, 6 months of poison, 1 fatal mistake on their part. Breyer's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, terrified. She looked at Desmond with the expression of someone who's just realized they've been betrayed, or maybe just realized they've betrayed themselves. Desmond, she gasped, her voice barely audible. What did you put in it? The words hung in the air like smoke, like evidence, like a confession recorded on 2 separate devices that would stand up in any court in Tennessee. Through the window, red and blue lights strobed across Breyer's pale face. Celeste stood frozen, her hand still reaching for her youngest daughter, but her eyes were locked on Desmond with a look I'd never seen before. She was starting to understand what I'd known for months. The paramedics were about to arrive, and every word they documented would become evidence. The fluorescent lights of Vanderbilt University Medical Center made everything look sterile, clinical, exactly what I needed to keep the rage at bay. 24 hours after the paramedics had rushed Breyer out of her own dining room, I sat across from Dr. Felicity Sutton, a 52-year-old forensic toxicologist with steel-gray hair and the kind of sharp instincts that made her Vanderbilt's lead specialist in poisoning cases. She studied my medical history like it was a crime scene. February, April, June, she said, spreading 3 manila folders across her desk. Each incident more severe than the last. Someone was calibrating. The word hung in the air between us. Not experimenting, not guessing, calibrating, like adjusting a microscope, like perfecting a recipe, like calculating exactly how much poison a 29-year-old woman could survive before the final dose killed her. My hands were steady as I pointed to the first folder. February 7th, dinner at my sister's house. I told the ER doctor I thought it was food poisoning. He agreed, sent me home with anti-nausea medication. Severe gastric distress, Dr. Sutton read from the file. Vomiting, abdominal cramping, dehydration requiring IV fluids. They noted your heart rate was elevated but attributed it to anxiety. April 19th, I moved to the second folder. Afternoon tea, same location, same people present. I started feeling dizzy 20 minutes after I arrived. Vision problems, tremors in my hands. The doctor suggested inner ear infection. Dr. Sutton's pen scratched across her notepad. Neurological symptoms, more severe, different presentation but consistent with dose escalation. June 22nd. The third folder was thicker. 3 days of hospitalization. Breakfast. I collapsed in Breyer's bathroom. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Ran every test. Cardiac arrhythmia, severe dehydration, systemic toxicity of unknown origin. They almost lost you, Dr. Sutton said quietly. Your heart rate dropped to 42 beats per minute. Another hour without treatment and you would have suffered organ failure. I kept telling doctors something was wrong. They said it was stress food sensitivity, anything but poison. And yesterday, Dr. Sutton continued pulling out a fourth folder Breyer's admission. Your sister presents with acute tremors, seizures, respiratory distress. The same progression you experienced in June, but compressed into minutes instead of hours. Because the dose was higher, I said. They'd perfected it. Once we get your sister's labs back, I can cross-match the chemical signatures. If they match... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. A knock at the door interrupted us. Detective Rosalba Prescott entered with the controlled intensity of someone who'd spent 2 decades investigating cases where families turned lethal. 47 years old, weathered face eyes that had seen too much and forgotten none of it. Mrs. Whitfield, she said, settling into the chair beside me. I've listened to the recording your attorney provided 3 times. She pulled out a small digital recorder and pressed play. Desmond's voice filled the office, panicked and damning. No, this wasn't supposed to... Stop! Rewind. Play again. That wasn't the cup meant for. 3 data points make a line. 3 poisonings make a pattern. 3 hospital visits make premeditated murder. This recording, Detective Prescott said. Did anyone know you were documenting? Only my attorney, Saskia Redmond. I've been logging incidents for 6 months. Emails to myself with timestamps. Symptom diaries, medical records, everything admissible under Tennessee law. The detective's expression shifted fractionally, something that might have been respect. You built a case. I built a survival strategy, I corrected. I didn't know if anyone would believe me, but I knew I needed proof. Dr. Sutton passed a preliminary report across the desk. Your sister is stable but critical. The compound causing her symptoms isn't something found in nature or household products. This was acquired deliberately. Arsenic, I asked. I'd done my research, months of late-night Googling, medical journals, toxicology databases. Every symptom I'd experienced pointed to one conclusion. Dr. Sutton's eyes narrowed. What makes you say arsenic? Metallic taste, GI distress, neurological symptoms, cardiac involvement. The progression matches. You're correct, she said. Preliminary results show arsenic trioxide in your sister's blood. Highly concentrated, not the trace amounts you'd find in contaminated water. This was pharmaceutical grade. Detective Prescott leaned forward. If the toxicology matches across all 4 incidents, we're looking at attempted murder with premeditation, conspiracy, possibly insurance fraud depending on what we find in the financial investigation. How long until you know if it matches my cases? My voice was steadier than I felt. 72 hours for full analysis, Dr. Sutton said. She removed her glasses, met my eyes directly. But Mrs. Whitfield, I need you to understand something. The amount your sister ingested was far more volatile than what sent you to the hospital in June. The purity of the foreign substance and the direct delivery method were optimized to ensure there would be no window for medical intervention. The cup I didn't drink from would have been the last thing I ever tasted. If you had drunk that coffee, Dr. Sutton continued, her clinical mask slipping just enough to show the human underneath, we'd be having a very different conversation. In the morgue, not my office. The words should have terrified me. Instead, they crystallized into something hard and clear. Desmond and Breyer hadn't just tried to kill me. They'd spent 6 months perfecting how to kill me, testing dosages on my body like I was a lab rat. Documenting my symptoms, I'd caught Desmond taking notes on his phone during my April episode, said he was tracking it for the doctors. He'd been tracking it for the murder. Detective Prescott closed her notebook with a definitive snap. I'm issuing a warrant for your husband's phone records and your sister's financial accounts. If they've been planning this for months, they left a trail. She paused at the door. And Mrs. Whitfield, we'll need to examine your workplace. If they tried to poison you at home, they might have tried elsewhere too. My office, where they could have sabotaged more than just my coffee. Quinn's expression told me everything before she even turned the laptop screen toward me. We'd spent 3 days combing through my office at Apex Consumer Brands, Detective Prescott's forensics team checking for physical contamination, while Quinn Bellamy, my 27-year-old executive assistant with an uncanny talent for digital forensics, pulled up file after file of what she was now calling professional assassination. These emails started in July, Quinn said, her voice tight with controlled anger. Someone's been systematically trying to destroy your client relationships. The screen showed a series of messages sent to my three largest accounts: Stratford Westfield Meridian, Retail Commonwealth Distribution, all from anonymous addresses, all alleging I was mentally unstable, unreliable, prone to erratic behavior that made me unsuitable for major contract management. Let me guess, I said, my voice flat. They coincide with my hospitalizations. Quinn pulled up a timeline she'd constructed with the precision of a prosecutor building a murder case. February, April, June hospital visits. July, August, September emails. They waited to see if the poison would work first. The pattern was so clear it hurt to look at. 3 attempts to kill me. 3 failures. Then a strategic pivot: if my body wouldn't cooperate with dying, they'd kill my career instead. Discredit me professionally so that when I finally did die, people would nod and say the stress had gotten to her, poor thing, she'd been spiraling for months. There's more, Quinn said, scrolling through my calendar. Meetings with Stratford Westfield rescheduled without your authorization. Conference calls with Commonwealth deleted entirely. Someone had access to your email account and was systematically sabotaging your schedule. Can you trace it? Working on it. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. But whoever did this knew what they were doing. They used a VPN routed through multiple servers. They wanted this to look like you were just falling apart. How do you kill someone in plain sight? You convince everyone they're already broken. The realization crystallized with brutal clarity. The emails weren't just sabotage. They were preparation. Build a narrative of mental decline. Make my colleagues question my competence. Make clients request different account managers. Then when I died from what would look like suicide or accidental overdose, or just another mysterious health crisis, no one would be surprised. They'd remember the missed meetings, the erratic behavior, the obvious signs they'd all been too polite to mention. Start logging everything, I said. Metadata, IP addresses, access timestamps. We need a complete forensic record. Quinn nodded, already pulling up tracking software. Detective Prescott said she'd send over a warrant for your full email server access. We'll have everything within 48 hours. I drove to my mother's house 2 days later with a folder of evidence I had no intention of showing her. Not yet. Not until she was ready to see it. Not until a courtroom forced her to confront what her favorite daughter had become. Celeste opened the door with red-rimmed eyes and immediate accusations. Briar is sick because of stress you caused, she said, not even inviting me inside. You've always been jealous of her success. I stood on the porch of my childhood home, the house where Briar and I had shared a bedroom until I was 12, where I'd helped her with homework and braided her hair and taught her how to parallel park. The house where our mother had somehow decided I was the disappointing one, despite my 6-figure salary and my perfect performance reviews, and my ability to land contracts that kept 50 people employed. Mom, do you remember my 3 hospitalizations? February, April, June. You've always been high-strung, Alara. Celeste's voice carried the same dismissive tone she'd used when I'd tried to tell her about Desmond's cold silences, about Briar's subtle cruelties, about the way I felt like I was disappearing in my own marriage. Briar tried to help you, and look how you repay her. She tried to help me, I repeated slowly, testing the words, tasting the gaslighting. She invited you to family meals even when you were difficult. She supported your career even though you took the job she wanted, and now she's in the hospital because you... Celeste's voice broke. Because you poisoned her. The accusation hung between us like smoke. My mother actually believed I'd poisoned Briar. Not the other way around? Not the 6 months of systematic arsenic administration that had nearly killed me 3 times. Not the perfected final dose meant to stop my heart. She believed I was the monster. I need to go, I said quietly. I didn't slam the door, didn't raise my voice, didn't present my evidence or demand she listen or try one more time to make her see me clearly. Strategic silence was its own kind of power. Let her sit with her version of events. Let her defend Breyer to neighbors and friends. Let her build her narrative. The courtroom would build mine. Body, career, family, they wanted all three destroyed before I took my last breath. I drove through Nashville as November darkness settled over the city, cataloging the conspiracy with the same analytical precision I used to build marketing campaigns. 3 prongs, 3 targets, 3 ways to erase a person so completely that no one would question her disappearance. Physical arsenic poisoning escalated over 6 months. Test dose in February. Increased dose in April. Near-lethal dose in June. The final dose on October 28th that would have killed me if I hadn't switched the cups. Professional anonymous emails to clients alleging mental instability. Calendar sabotage, making me look unreliable. Character assassination designed to destroy my reputation so my death would seem like inevitable collapse. Personal weaponizing. Celeste's favoritism. Turning my mother into an ally who would defend them even after I died. Isolating me from family support so no one would ask hard questions about the convenient timing of my fatal health crisis. They weren't just trying to kill me, they were trying to erase me completely. Rewrite my last months as a cautionary tale about stress and mental health and women who work too hard. Make my death look like something I'd done to myself through poor self-care and high-strung anxiety. But they'd made one mistake. They'd underestimated how much evidence a marketing director knows how to document. My phone buzzed with a message from Quinn. Found the IP source. You need to see this. Attached was a screenshot every anonymous email traced back to a single device. A device registered to Breyer's secondary account at Crescent Brand Studios. They'd left a digital fingerprint on everything. And Detective Prescott would need every bite of that evidence. The doorbell camera at 2847 Maple Ridge Lane had been recording everything for 18 months. I just hadn't known to ask until now. Detective Prescott had suggested it 2 days after Quinn traced the sabotage emails to Breyer's device. Your sister's neighbors, she'd said. Someone always sees something. We just need to find who is paying attention. Irene Holbrook opened her door before I finished knocking. 64 years old, retired paralegal with silver hair pulled into a practical bun, she had the kind of meticulous security system that comes from decades of understanding evidence chains. Her relief was immediate and visible. You're Breyer's sister, she said, not a question, an identification. I am. Detective Prescott said you might have security footage from earlier this year. Irene stepped back, gesturing me inside. I thought about calling someone months ago, but what would I say? A man visiting his sister-in-law isn't a crime. We walked through a living room filled with gardening magazines and framed photographs of grandchildren into a small home office. 3 computer monitors sat on an L-shaped desk. One displayed a grid of camera angles: front door, driveway, street view, backyard. My husband installed the system before he passed, Irene said, settling into her chair. Said a woman living alone needed eyes everywhere. I've got 18 months of continuous footage backed up to cloud storage. 18 months, long enough to capture everything. What if I told you those visits line up with 3 times I ended up in the hospital? I kept my voice steady, clinical. February, April, June. All after family meals at Breyer's house. Irene's hand froze on her mouse. She turned to look at me directly, paralegal instincts cataloging my expression, my tone, my absolute seriousness. Oh my God, she breathed. I have the footage saved. Let me pull up February through June. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. The screen filled with timestamps, folders organized by month, each file labeled with date and camera angle. She clicked on Street View January. There, she said, advancing through frames. January 30th, 11:47 p.m. That's when I first noticed the pattern. The image was crystal clear. High-definition night vision infrared LED illumination. Desmond's black Audi pulled into Breyer's driveway, Tennessee license plate, perfectly legible. He got out, walked to her front door. It opened before he knocked. She'd been waiting. What time did he leave? Irene fast-forwarded. 2:13 a.m., almost 2.5 hours. I pulled out my phone, opened my medical records app. February 2nd, 3:47 a.m. Admission to Vanderbilt ER. Severe gastric distress. Vomiting, dehydration. 3 days after Desmond's midnight visit to Breyer's house. March, I said. Irene clicked through folders. March 28th, 11:23 p.m. The same car, the same furtive arrival, the same door opening before he reached it, left at 1:55 a.m. April 1st, my second hospitalization. Dizziness, tremors, vision problems. May 31st, 10:56 p.m. This time he'd arrived earlier. Stayed longer, the timestamp showed him leaving at 2:34 a.m. I almost called the police that night. Something felt wrong about the whole thing. June 3rd, cardiac arrhythmia, systemic toxicity, 3 days in the hospital. The time I'd almost died. Coincidence needs chaos. Conspiracy leaves a calendar. The pattern was mathematical. Precise. Desmond visited Breyer late at night, stayed for hours, left before dawn. 2 to 3 days later, I ended up hospitalized with symptoms that baffled doctors. And each dose had been stronger than the last. Planning sessions. They were coordinating the doses, the timing, the cover stories. Can you export these files? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Irene was already pulling up export protocols. I can burn them to a USB drive with verified timestamps. And I'll write an affidavit documenting the camera system's accuracy and maintenance records. Will this go to court? Almost certainly. Good. Her jaw set with determination. I should have said something months ago. I knew something was off. A man doesn't visit his sister-in-law at midnight unless something's wrong. I called Saskia while Irene prepared the files. My attorney answered on the first ring, already expecting news. Tell me you have something, she said. 18 months of security footage from Breyer's next-door neighbor. High-definition timestamps showing Desmond's car arriving late at night on January 30th, March 28th, and May 31st. I was hospitalized February 2nd, April 1st, and June 3rd. Silence. Then. That's premeditation. That's conspiracy. That's gold Ilara. Unimpeachable third-party documentation with time, date, and license plate. The neighbor's a retired paralegal. She's preparing a notarized affidavit and proper chain of custody documentation. I love her already, Saskia said. Get everything to Detective Prescott within the hour. This is the timeline we need. Irene handed me the USB drive sealed in an evidence bag she'd apparently kept from her paralegal days. The affidavit was typed, signed, dated, and ready for notarization. I'll testify, she said firmly. Whatever you need. I watched that man come and go for months and convinced myself it was none of my business. If he hurt you? He tried to kill me, I said quietly. 3 times. They were testing dosages. Her face went pale. Those visits were planning sessions. Yes. Then I'm testifying, and I'm getting this notarized today. 3 midnight meetings, 3 doses, 3 near deaths. The math was that simple. I forwarded the files to Detective Prescott from Irene's computer, copied Saskia, and sent a third copy to my own encrypted cloud storage. 3 backups, 3 pieces of irrefutable evidence, 3 data points that formed an undeniable line from conspiracy to attempted murder. As I drove back toward Nashville, my phone rang. Detective Prescott. The warrant came through for your workplace IT logs, she said without preamble. Quinn's already found something we need to discuss in person. Her voice carried a weight I recognized. She'd found the digital smoking gun. And if the IP address matched Breyer's device, the conspiracy would have both physical and digital proof. The IP address glowed on Quinn's screen like a confession, 192.168.47.103, registered to Crescent Brand Studios, Floor 3, Desk 17, Breyer's workstation. I'd driven straight from Irene's house to Apex Consumer Brands headquarters, where Detective Prescott was already waiting with Quinn and Gerald Kingsley, our 51-year-old IT security manager. Gerald had 20 years of corporate digital forensics experience and the kind of methodical precision that made him dangerous to people who thought deleting emails meant erasing evidence. Whoever sent these wasn't even using a VPN, Gerald said, pulling up a complex web of server logs and metadata trails. They thought they were untraceable, but they left a digital highway straight back to the source. The screen displayed 17 separate emails, each one timestamped. Each one tracked through internet service providers and corporate servers back to a single point of origin. Quinn clicked through them, methodically anonymous Gmail accounts with names like concerned_colleague and industry_insider, all sending the same message to my key clients: unstable, unreliable, mentally compromised. 17 emails, all from one IP address. Quinn said, her voice tight with controlled anger. She pulled up a device registration form. Here's the corporate assignment, Briar Harrington, Senior Marketing Strategist, Crescent Brand Studios, 3rd floor. She was doing it from her office, I said, the realization settling like ice in my chest. During work hours, she thought she'd already won. No VPN, no proxy servers, no attempt to hide her digital footprint beyond using throwaway email accounts. The arrogance was breathtaking. She'd been so confident I'd be dead before anyone thought to investigate that she hadn't bothered covering her tracks. Gerald advanced through the timeline. First email sent July 8th, 2024 at 2:47 p.m. sent to Stratford Westfield's VP of Procurement. I pulled up my phone calendar. July 8th. That's 5 weeks after my 3rd hospitalization. She was waiting to see if I'd come back. And when you did come back, Quinn interjected, overlaying the email frequency on a graph. She escalated. 2 emails in July, 4 and August 11 in September. The pattern was surgical. Test the waters in July with a couple of messages. See if I'd notice if anyone would defend me. When I continued working, when the major contracts stayed intact despite whispers of instability, she'd ramped up the assault. 11 emails in September alone, each one to a different stakeholder, each one planting seeds of doubt. Digital footprints don't lie, they just wait patiently in server logs until someone knows where to look. She was building a narrative, Gerald said, pulling up the email content side by side. Making clients believe you were unstable before something more permanent happened. Look at the progression. July emails mention concerning behavior. August emails reference erratic decision-making. September emails suggest mental health crisis requiring intervention. I read through them with clinical detachment. Each email was carefully worded to sound like genuine concern from an anonymous industry insider. Each one cited specific meetings I'd supposedly mishandled, meetings that had actually gone perfectly, but how would a client know that when someone claiming inside knowledge said otherwise? She wanted them prepared, I said quietly. When I died, they'd nod and say they'd seen it coming. Poor Alara worked herself to death. Everyone could see she was falling apart. Quinn's jaw tightened. The last email was sent September 29th, 3 weeks before the October 28th incident. 3 weeks before the final dose. The timing was perfect. Let the professional destruction narrative settle into clients' minds, then eliminate the problem permanently. My death would seem like tragic inevitability rather than murder. Detective Prescott had been silent through the presentation, taking notes with the focused intensity of someone building a prosecution case. Now she looked up from her tablet. This is premeditation with documentation, she said. She was building your professional obituary. The phrase hung in the air. Professional obituary. The story that would be told after I died. The narrative that would make my murder look like burnout, like stress-induced health collapse, like anything except what it was. If I'd drunk that coffee on October 28th, I said, everyone would have said I was unstable, overworked, tragic, but predictable. Exactly. Detective Prescott confirmed. She pulled up her own timeline on the conference room screen, a comprehensive grid showing everything we'd gathered. Neighbor security footage proves conspiracy meetings. IT forensics prove professional sabotage with documented motive. Toxicology matches across all 4 incidents. We have when, where, how, and why. What don't we have? I asked, though I already knew. Who supplied the chemical compound? She zoomed in on the toxicology report section. Dr. Sutton confirmed it's pharmaceutical-grade arsenic trioxide, not something you buy at a hardware store. Someone manufactured it, someone sold it, and someone kept records. 17 emails, 3 poisonings, one sister willing to destroy everything I'd built. The realization wasn't shocking anymore. It was just data, evidence, proof of what I'd known in my bones since that first metallic scent hit my nostrils at Briar's dining table. My sister had tried to erase me body, career, reputation, and she'd documented her own crime while doing it. Gerald, can you compile everything into a certified forensic report? Detective Prescott asked. Already in progress. I'll have the complete digital evidence package ready for the prosecutor by end of day. Quinn, duplicate everything to 3 separate encrypted drives, chain of custody documentation on all of it. Done, Quinn said. Detective Prescott stood closing her tablet with finality. Tomorrow we execute search warrants on both residences. If Desmond kept dosage notes or chemical containers, we'll find them. She looked at me with something between respect and concern. Mrs. Whitfield, you should know we're also pulling your husband's financial records. If they bought this compound, they paid for it somehow. The money trail. Of course. Pharmaceutical-grade poison wasn't free. Someone had procured it, someone had paid for it, and banks kept records that survived deletion. How long for the financial investigation? I asked. Warrants already approved. We'll have account records within 72 hours. And if they paid for it, the money would lead us to the source. The lock on Desmond's desk drawer gave way with a small, satisfying crack. I'd stopped asking permission months ago. Detective Prescott's financial warrant wouldn't arrive for another 48 hours. But I had a key to my own home, and a letter opener sharp enough to bypass the cheap brass lock Desmond thought protected his secrets. The townhouse was empty. He was at work. I had time. The bottom drawer of his home office desk had been locked for as long as I could remember. Tax documents, he'd said when I'd asked once. Boring financial stuff you don't need to worry about. I'd believed him because that's what wives do trust, that their husbands handle the paperwork, pay the bills, manage the investments. I'd been so stupid. The drawer slid open with a protesting scrape. Tax documents sat on top just like he'd said. IRS forms from 2021. Bank statements. Nothing interesting. But underneath, wedged against the back panel, was a manila folder with a label written in Desmond's precise handwriting, Estate Planning Confidential. Estate planning. We never discussed estate planning. My hands shook as I lifted the folder out. It was surprisingly thick, heavy with documentation. I carried it to his desk, my husband's desk, in our jointly owned home that I'd helped pay for with my salary from Apex Consumer Brands, and opened it under the afternoon light streaming through windows I'd picked out 3 years ago. The first document was insurance paperwork. Pinnacle Life Assurance. My name was prominently displayed at the top. Insured Elara M. Whitfield Policy. Amount $210,000. Beneficiary Desmond R. Whitfield. Sole. Effective date July 15th, 2022. Monthly premium $847. Auto debit joint checking. July 15th. I pulled up my phone calendar, scrolled back. June 3rd, hospitalized with cardiac arrhythmia and systemic toxicity. June 6th, released with follow-up instructions and no diagnosis. July 15th, 6 weeks later, Desmond opened a life insurance policy worth over $2 million. $2.1 million. That's what my death was worth to him. He was paying for my murder with our joint checking account. $847 automatically withdrawn every month since July. I'd never noticed because Desmond managed our finances, sent me monthly summaries that I'd glanced at and approved. The premium had been buried in a line item called Insurance Various. I'd assumed it meant our car coverage, our homeowner's policy. I'd paid for my own assassination. My life, $2.1 million. My home, $850,000. My existence line items waiting to be liquidated. I set the insurance policy aside with shaking hands and pulled out the next document. Property transfer paperwork for 847 Riverside Terrace, our townhouse. Currently valued at $850,000 according to the assessment attached. Currently owned jointly by Elara M. Whitfield and Desmond R. Whitfield per the deed recorded in Davidson County. Except these documents would change that. Transfer of property rights upon death of co-owner, read the header. Legal language filled 3 pages, whereas, and heretofore, and party of the first part, but the meaning was crystal clear. Upon my death, sole ownership of the property would transfer to Desmond Whitfield. No probate, no estate division, no complicated legal process. Just a death certificate and these pre-signed forms. Except my signature line was blank. I stared at the empty space where my name should be the line waiting for ink that would never come from my living hand. He'd prepared everything, filled in his information, dated the document, attached the current deed and assessment. All that was missing was my authorization. The signature line is blank. He was going to sign my name after I was dead. Or maybe he'd just claim survivorship rights, use the death certificate to bypass my signature entirely. Either way, the townhouse would be his. The insurance payout would be his. Everything we'd built together would become his property the moment my heart stopped beating. I wasn't a wife, I was inventory. Assets waiting for the right paperwork and a convenient death. My phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to move. Camera app open. Timestamp feature activated. I photographed every page, the insurance policy first, making sure the effective date and beneficiary information were clearly visible. Then the property transfer documents, each page individually, the blank signature line captured in high resolution. I texted the photos to Saskia, found the financial motive. He was planning to own everything. Her reply came within 30 seconds. Do not touch anything else. I'm calling Detective Prescott. This is exhibit quality evidence. I kept photographing. There were more documents beneath the property transfer investment account statements showing our joint portfolio worth $340,000 with beneficiary designations I'd never signed. A list of my employer benefits, including the Apex retirement account, worth $180,000. Even my car title with a forged transfer signature I could tell wasn't mine because the E was wrong. $3 million. That's the price tag they put on erasing me. 2.1 in life insurance, 850,000 in property, 340,000 in investments, 180,000 in retirement. Add my car, our furniture, the value of closing the joint accounts and consolidating everything under his name alone. I wasn't worth killing for love or passion or even hatred. I was worth killing for a $3 million payout that would set him and Briar up comfortably for the rest of their lives. As I photographed the last page, a small business card fell from the folder and landed face up on the desk. Cream-colored cardstock, professional printing. Dr. Raymond Calder, biochemical research consultant. Below that, a phone number with a 615 area code, Nashville local. I turned the card over. Handwritten in blue ink, same precise handwriting as the folder label. As discussed, $3,800, no paper trail. My hands went numb. The card slipped from my fingers, fluttered back to the desk. They'd found someone to sell them the poison, and Desmond had kept the receipt. Dr. Sutton laid 4 lab reports side by side on her desk, February, April, June, October. And when she looked up at me, I saw something I'd never seen in her clinical gaze before: rage. I'd sent her photographs of the business card within minutes of finding it. Dr. Raymond Calder, biochemical research consultant. The handwritten note on the back, as discussed, $3,800, no paper trail. She'd called me at 7 in the morning, asked me to come to Vanderbilt immediately. Her voice had carried an urgency that made me drive faster than I should have. Now she tapped the October report with one precise finger. RT-47, she said. I've only seen it twice in 20 years, both times in research labs, never in a living patient. What does RT-47 do? In controlled doses, severe gastrointestinal distress and neurological symptoms, tremors, vision problems, cardiac irregularities. She pulled up a molecular diagram on her computer screen. In higher concentrations, multi-organ failure within 48 hours. It's an experimental neurotoxin originally developed for pharmaceutical pain research. It was never approved for human use because the side effects were catastrophic. But someone had access to it. Yes. Dr. Sutton's jaw tightened. RT-47 isn't naturally occurring. It's not commercially available. You can't order it online or synthesize it in a garage lab. It can only be obtained through illegal pharmaceutical research channels, people with laboratory access who are willing to break every ethical boundary. The compound's rarity was actually good news for the investigation. Limited supply meant limited suppliers. Someone had manufactured this. Someone had sold it to Desmond. And somewhere there was a record. Dr. Sutton pulled the 4 lab reports closer together, aligning them so I could see the chemical breakdown side by side. I cross-matched the molecular signature from your preserved blood samples February 2nd, April 1st, and June 3rd, 2022, with your sister's sample from October 28th. The fingerprint is identical. This is the same compound from the same source across 8 months. She highlighted sections of each report with a yellow marker. Same metabolic markers, same degradation pattern, same distinctive chemical structure that marked RT-47 like a forensic signature. They were calibrating. I said the words, tasting like metal in my mouth, testing how much I could survive. Exactly. Dr. Sutton pulled up a concentration analysis. February dose was 0.3 milligrams. April was 0.7 milligrams. June was 1.2 milligrams, zero point 0.3 milligrams, zero point 0.7, 1.2, 4.8, a mathematical progression toward my death. I watched her finger move down the column to the October analysis, Breyer's analysis, the coffee I was supposed to have drunk. The October dose was 4.8 milligrams, Dr. Sutton said quietly. Mrs. Whitfield, if you had drunk that coffee, you would have been dead within 36 hours. This concentration doesn't cause symptoms you recover from. It causes total systemic failure, kidneys, liver, heart. There would have been nothing we could do. 4.8 milligrams, 16 times the initial dose. They'd spent 6 months learning exactly how much poison my body could process before shutting down, and then they'd quadrupled that lethal threshold to ensure I wouldn't survive long enough for doctors to figure out what was wrong. The hospital photos from June flashed through my mind. Me bald from stress and toxin exposure, hooked up to monitors while my heart rate dropped to 42 beats per minute. The doctors had called it a mystery, a medical anomaly. They'd sent me home with instructions to reduce stress and follow up if symptoms recurred. If symptoms recurred. As if my husband wasn't planning the next dose before I'd even been discharged. This evidence is unimpeachable, Dr. Sutton said, organizing the reports into a folder. 4 victims, 8 months identical compound escalating doses, that's systematic poisoning. I will testify to this in court with absolute scientific certainty. 4 victims, me 3 times then Breyer once when the trap reversed. I found a business card in my husband's desk, I said, pulling up the photograph on my phone. Dr. Raymond Calder, biochemical research consultant. Does that name mean anything? Dr. Sutton's expression shifted from professional anger to personal contempt. Raymond Calder. He lost his pharmaceutical research license in 2019 for ethics violations. Sold experimental compounds to private buyers, falsified research data, violated about a dozen FDA regulations. She took my phone and enlarged the image of the handwritten note. If he's selling RT-47, Detective Prescott needs to know immediately. This is the source. $3,800. That's what it cost to buy enough poison to kill me 4 times over. Less than the monthly premium on the life insurance policy. A rounding error compared to the $3 million in assets they'd planned to steal. I'll forward this to the detective, Dr. Sutton said, already pulling up her email. Calder's operating illegally, which means he's keeping records somewhere. People like him always do insurance against getting caught, leverage against clients who might turn on them. You think he documented the sale? I think Raymond Calder is exactly the kind of person who keeps meticulous notes about his illegal transactions. She attached my photograph to an email copied Detective Prescott and Saskia. And if he sold your husband RT-47, there's probably a paper trail he's been too arrogant to destroy. Science doesn't lie. Chemistry doesn't have reasonable doubt. The molecules told the truth my family refused to see. Dr. Sutton printed copies of the toxicology reports, sealed them in evidence bags, and handed me a summary document for my records. This goes to the prosecutor today. The chemical proof alone is enough to convict, but finding Calder will close the circle. My phone rang as I left her office, Quinn's name on the screen. You need to get to the office now. Her voice was tight with concern. The Stratford Westfield client just called an emergency meeting. Someone sent them an email this morning claiming you're under criminal investigation. They were still trying to destroy my career even as the evidence walls closed in. Philip Stratford slid a printed email across the cafe table toward me. Subject: Alara Whitfield criminal investigation notice, and waited to see if I would flinch. I'd driven straight from Dr. Sutton's office to Artisan Roast in downtown Nashville, where the 54-year-old senior vice president of Stratford Westfield sat studying me with the sharp assessment of someone who'd built a career reading people under pressure. The cafe smelled like espresso and ambition. Our contract renewal was 6 days away, and someone had sent him this. I read the email without touching it. Anonymous sender, professional formatting, allegations that I was under investigation by Nashville Metro Police for fraud and embezzlement, that my clients should be warned before finalizing major contracts, that my mental instability made me a liability. I'll be honest, Stratford said, his voice carefully neutral. This email raised concerns. We need to understand what's happening. I pulled 3 folders from my bag and set them on the table between us. Medical records, police documentation, forensic evidence summaries. I'm the victim, not the criminal, I said, meeting his eyes directly. My husband and sister have been poisoning me for 8 months while sabotaging my career. I have forensic evidence, toxicology reports, and law enforcement documentation. The people sending these emails are the ones facing criminal charges, not me. Stratford opened the first folder. His expression shifted as he scanned Dr. Sutton's toxicology summary. Detective Prescott's case number. Saskia's legal brief establishing timeline and evidence chain. You brought police reports to a client meeting, he said slowly. That's either insane or incredibly strategic. I'd realized something driving over truth was more powerful than denial. Stratford didn't need me to pretend everything was fine. He needed me to prove I could deliver despite chaos. Given your track record, he continued, closing the folder, I'm betting on strategic. The Meridian campaign you delivered last quarter exceeded projections by 43%. You secured Commonwealth distribution when 3 other firms failed. And this contract, he tapped the email, is worth $4.2 million because you convinced my board we needed full-scale market repositioning. What's worth more, a pristine reputation built on lies or a damaged one built on documented truth? November 18th it is, Stratford said. I'll see you at the signing. And Mrs. Whitfield, I hope your husband and sister face everything they deserve. 2 days later, I was reviewing presentation materials in my office when Quinn appeared in the doorway with her laptop, her face tight with urgency. Someone's in your calendar right now, she said, setting the computer on my desk. Active session. They're deleting your 3 p.m. briefing. The screen showed my calendar system's admin panel, a view only I should have access to. But there it was, unauthorized login at 11:47 a.m. November 14th. As we watched, the cursor moved across the screen, clicking on my afternoon client briefing with Stratford's team and dragging it to the trash. Lock them out, I said. Capture everything. Quinn's fingers flew across the keyboard. Capturing full audit trail. Session data, IP address, access logs, got it. She ran the trace while simultaneously forcing a system lockout. IP trace complete. 192.168.47.103. The same address, the same device. Breyer's desk at Crescent, Quinn confirmed, pulling up the corporate registration we'd documented before. She's doing this right now knowing she's caught. The toxicology evidence, the neighbor footage, the email trail, she knows all of it, and she's still actively sabotaging. I stared at the screen, the deleted calendar entry, the IP address that might as well have been a signature. Breyer wasn't trying to hide anymore. She was desperate. Forward everything to Detective Prescott, I said. Timestamp, screen captures, audit logs, IP, trace all of it. Quinn was already composing the email. This is exhibit quality real-time evidence. She's committing digital crimes while under investigation for attempted murder. We watched the logs scroll past login timestamps, access attempts, deletion records. Each line was another piece of evidence, another demonstration of obsessive desperation. The professional sabotage campaign that had started in July with careful anonymity had devolved into this real-time attacks from her own work computer at 11:47 on a Tuesday morning. The emails didn't work, I said quietly. The calendar sabotage failed. The pattern is escalation. Quinn looked up from her laptop. You think they'll try something physical again? February poison, July emails, November real-time sabotage. They weren't stopping. They were accelerating. I thought about the timeline. The contract signing was November 18th, 4 days away. The event that would secure my professional future and demonstrate that their 8-month campaign had failed. The moment that would prove I'd survived everything they'd done and emerged stronger. They're not going to let me sign that contract. Not if they can stop me. I need security, I said, in for the signing, for the office, for my apartment. I'll talk to building management, Quinn said immediately. And I'm copying Gerald on this email. If she tries accessing any Apex systems again, we'll know instantly. My phone rang that evening as I was leaving the office. Detective Prescott's name on the screen. We found Dr. Raymond Calder, she said without preamble. He's willing to cooperate in exchange for immunity. He'll testify that your husband paid him $3,800 for RT-47 compound and dosing instructions. We have his sales ledger, his laboratory notes, his correspondence with Desmond. Evidence, testimony, cooperation. The source of the poison confirmed. We're ready to make arrests, Detective Prescott continued. But there's something you should know first about your sister's financial situation. I stopped walking, stood perfectly still in the parking garage. What about it? Briar Harrington is $300,000 in debt. Credit cards, personal loans, her mortgage is 90 days past due. She's been living beyond her means for years. Detective Prescott's voice carried a weight I recognized. Mrs. Whitfield, your life insurance payout wasn't just about your husband's greed. Your sister needed that money to avoid bankruptcy. The conspiracy was even bigger than I'd imagined. I arrived at the Stratford Westfield building at 7:30 a.m., 90 minutes before the scheduled meeting, because I knew Briar would be waiting to stop me. Detective Prescott's revelation about my sister's financial desperation had clarified everything. 300,000 in debt, 90 days past due on her mortgage. The life insurance payout wasn't just Desmond's greed, it was Briar's lifeline. And people drowning in debt make desperate choices. The executive parking entrance was empty at this hour, exactly as I'd planned. I'd texted Quinn at 6 a.m. with instructions: enter through the service corridor, set up the boardroom, early watch for Briar. My assistant had replied with a thumbs up and a single word: ready. I took the elevator from the underground garage directly to the 14th floor, bypassing the main lobby entirely. The building was quiet, corporate silence broken only by the hum of ventilation systems and the distant sound of a cleaning crew. My heels clicked against polished marble as I walked toward the boardroom. Quinn was already there, presentation materials laid out with geometric precision. Laptop connected to the display screen. Printed contracts in leather folders. Water glasses filled. She looked up as I entered. I see Briar in the main lobby, she texted, not speaking aloud. She's watching the elevators. I pulled out my phone. Good, let her wait, we're already in position. She thought she could physically block me from my own contract signing. Amateur. At 8:15, Quinn sent another text with a photo: Briar standing near the elevator bank, checking her watch, scanning every person who exited. She was dressed professionally, hair perfect, makeup flawless, playing the role of concerned sister probably, ready to intercept me with some fabricated emergency or tearful plea that would delay the meeting just long enough to create doubt. But I was already 14 floors above her, reviewing slide decks and financial projections. At 8:45, the Stratford Westfield executive team began arriving. Philip Stratford, first, followed by their CFO, their VP of Operations, and two senior analysts. They greeted me with professional warmth, accepted coffee from Quinn, settled into leather chairs around the conference table. Briar must have realized by then that I wasn't coming through the lobby, that her ambush had failed before it started. At exactly 9 a.m., I began the presentation. Good morning. Today we're finalizing a $4.2 million partnership that will fundamentally reshape your market positioning in the Southeast region. 45 minutes of flawless delivery. ROI projections showing 38% growth over 3 years. Risk mitigation strategies addressing every concern their board had raised. Team credentials demonstrating Apex's capacity to execute at this scale. I'd built this presentation over 3 months while being systematically poisoned, and every slide proved I'd never let their conspiracy touch my professional excellence. They tried to poison my body, destroy my career, turn my family against me. And I still showed up 90 minutes early with a perfect pitch deck. The CFO asked about recent allegations, carefully worded, professionally distant. I answered with equal precision. I'm currently the victim in an ongoing criminal investigation, I said, meeting his eyes directly. My husband and a family member have been charged with attempted murder and professional sabotage. The allegations you may have heard were part of that sabotage campaign. Detective Rosalba Prescott of Nashville Metro can verify everything I'm saying. Silence around the table. Then Philip Stratford spoke. Your composure under what must be extraordinary personal pressure is exactly why we're confident in this partnership. I'd prepared for judgment, for withdrawal, for corporate risk aversion that would tank the deal despite my track record. Instead, I got respect. Professional excellence isn't conditional on personal comfort, I said. It's a choice I make every day. Stratford smiled. Welcome to a multi-year relationship, Ms. Whitfield. Let's build something remarkable. At 9:52 a.m., he signed the contract. $4.2 million, 3-year commitment, renewable terms. The biggest deal of my career secured while my husband and sister faced attempted murder charges. Quinn caught my eye across the table and permitted herself a small, fierce smile. We spent another 20 minutes on implementation logistics, then handshakes, then professional goodbyes. I gathered the signed contracts into my briefcase, physical proof that I'd won, that 8 months of systematic destruction hadn't broken me. $4.2 million. Signed, sealed, mine. Now they had nothing left to take except my life. At 10:05, Quinn and I stepped into the elevator bay. The doors opened. Briar was waiting. She looked terrible, pale, exhausted, desperate in a way that made her professional polish look like costume jewelry. Her eyes went to the briefcase in my hand, the one containing signed contracts, and something collapsed behind her carefully maintained expression. "Elara, wait!" She started, her voice carrying an edge of panic. "We need to talk about—" I walked past her without responding. Didn't slow my stride. Didn't acknowledge her existence. Quinn followed half a step behind me, her own briefcase held like a shield. "She looks terrified," Quinn murmured as we reached the main elevators. "Like she knows what's coming. Arrests, prosecution, prison. Everything they'd tried to do to me reversed and legally sanctioned." The elevator descended in silence. Lobby level. The doors opened onto marble and morning light. I checked my phone, 3 texts from Saskia congratulating me on the contract, 1 email from Detective Prescott requesting a meeting this afternoon. Then a new message appeared. "Unknown number, burner phone. There's one more meeting you need to attend." No context, no signature, just 11 words that made my blood go cold. I forwarded it to Detective Prescott, immediately copied Saskia, saved the screenshot. Quinn saw my expression. "What is it?" I showed her the message. Her face went pale. "That's a threat," she said. "Yes? You need security, now." The anonymous text came from a burner number, untraceable, ominous. I forwarded it to Detective Prescott immediately, but a cold certainty settled in my chest. They weren't going to let me walk away from this alive. And the next attack would come from a direction I hadn't protected. The HR notification landed in my inbox at 8:47 a.m. on the day before Thanksgiving. Anonymous employee concern, urgent review required. I'd spent the previous 3 days on high alert after the threatening text message, varying my routes to work, checking my car for tampering, never drinking anything I hadn't personally prepared. Detective Prescott had increased patrols near my apartment. Saskia had advised me to document every movement. And now this. Quinn appeared in my doorway 30 seconds after the email arrived, her laptop already open. "You've seen it," she said, not a question. "Just opened it." "It's brutal." She set the laptop on my desk, pulling up the full complaint. "They're calling for psych eval, drug screening, immediate suspension." I read through 8 paragraphs of calculated character assassination. Chronic substance abuse, severe mental instability, erratic behavior endangering client relationships, paranoid delusions about family members. The language was clinical, professional, devastating. Someone had written this to sound like genuine concern from a worried colleague. "November 18th at 11:47 p.m., I said, noting the timestamp. "I signed the contract at 9:52 a.m. Quinn's expression hardened. "They filed this the same day you won. They're not even hiding the retaliation anymore." 11:47 at night. 13 hours after I'd walked out of the Stratford Westfield building with signed contracts. Just enough time for Briar to realize her ambush had failed, her sabotage had collapsed, and she needed a new attack vector. So she'd tried to destroy my institutional credibility. "Run the metadata," I said. Quinn was already pulling up forensic tools. On it, the submission came from an external email address, disposable, routed through. She clicked through layers of data. Public library computer in Brentwood. Smart, no IP trail back to her. But the document itself, that's where she got sloppy. Quinn enlarged the metadata panel. The complaint was created on November 18th at 9:13 p.m. on a device registered to Crescent Brand Studios. She wrote it at work, then drove to a public library to submit it anonymously. Of course she did. The same pattern as the defamation emails created on her work computer, because she felt safe there, submitted through external channels to create distance. But digital forensics don't care about physical distance. They care about device fingerprints and creation timestamps. They poisoned my body for 8 months. Now they're poisoning my institutional credibility in 8 paragraphs. "There's more," Quinn said, highlighting specific passages. She referenced your hospitalizations. Dates, symptoms, specific ER visits. February 7th, April 19th, June 22nd. She even mentioned the cardiac arrhythmia from the June admission. I felt cold spreading through my chest. Only someone with my medical records would know those details. Exactly. She either illegally accessed your health information or Desmond gave it to her. Quinn started documenting everything. Either way, that's HIPAA violation, identity theft, illegal use of protected health information. The strategic brilliance of the attack crystallized in my mind. If HR officially labeled me mentally unstable before Detective Prescott made arrests, every piece of evidence I'd gathered would appear to be paranoid delusion. The toxicology reports, manufactured by someone experiencing psychiatric crisis. The recordings, fabricated during a mental breakdown. My claims of systematic poisoning, classic paranoid conspiracy thinking, requiring immediate intervention. Before I show you what this HR complaint was really designed to destroy, let me ask. Comment. A, if you think I should fight this publicly, or B, if I should handle it quietly through legal channels, and tell me why in 5 words. Quick note, the next part includes some dramatized details to convey the strategic warfare at play. The lesson is what matters. This is genius, I said quietly. If HR believes I'm unstable, everything I've documented becomes suspect. Quinn nodded grimly. They're trying to discredit you institutionally before the criminal charges are filed. If Apex puts you on administrative leave for psychiatric evaluation, Desmond's defense attorney uses that in court. Your Honor, the alleged victim was deemed mentally unfit by her own employer. Her testimony is unreliable. What's more powerful forensic evidence of attempted murder, or a single HR label that makes you look crazy? We need HR to hear from Detective Prescott directly. I said, already pulling up my phone. Today, before this complaint gets traction, I'll compile the counter-evidence package. Quinn said, her fingers already flying across the keyboard. Police reports, toxicology results, the neighbor's security footage, the digital sabotage documentation, everything. We bury them in proof that you're the victim, not the aggressor. I called Saskia first. She answered on the second ring. I was just about to call you, she said. Detective Prescott contacted me about... There's an HR complaint, I interrupted. Anonymous. Filed the night I signed the Stratford contract. Alleging substance abuse and mental instability. They're requesting immediate administrative leave and psychiatric evaluation. Silence on the line. Then, send me everything. I'll contact Apex's general counsel within the hour. We'll provide law enforcement documentation, medical evidence, the full criminal case summary. HR won't act without consulting legal, and legal won't move forward once they see you're the victim in an active attempted murder investigation. How fast can you move? I'm already drafting the letter. You'll have it in 30 minutes. Quinn had the evidence package ready by the time Saskia's email arrived. Police case number, Detective Prescott's direct contact, Dr. Sutton's toxicology summary, the neighbor's sworn affidavit with security footage timestamps, Gerald's IT forensics report tracing 17 defamation emails to Breyer's work computer, the business card for Dr. Raymond Calder with Desmond's handwritten note about purchasing poison. Every piece of documentation proving I wasn't paranoid, I was targeted. My phone rang as Quinn hit send on the HR submission, Saskia's name on screen. Detective Prescott just called me, she said without preamble. They're executing arrest warrants tomorrow morning, November 25th. Finally. After weeks of evidence gathering, after forensic analysis and witness statements and documented conspiracy, they were making arrests. Both of them, I asked. Desmond Whitfield and Breyer Harrington. Charges include attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder fraud, identity theft, and illegal procurement of controlled substances. Saskia's voice was tight with something I couldn't identify. Alara, you need to know your mother is listed as a potential witness for the defense. My own mother was going to testify against me. From my car parked 3 rows back in the dim parking garage, I watched Breyer's Mercedes pull in at 9:47 p.m. exactly when I'd anonymously tipped her that Desmond would be here. The news about my mother testifying for the defense had stung for exactly 12 minutes before I'd converted the pain into strategy. If Celeste wanted to defend them, she could watch them destroy each other instead. I'd spent the afternoon crafting anonymous text messages from burner phones carefully worded to sound urgent and trustworthy. To Breyer. Desmond needs to see you. Parking garage level 3, 9:45 p.m. Come alone. Don't call, he thinks his phone is tapped. To Desmond, Breyer says it's urgent about tomorrow's arrests. Level 3 garage 9:50 p.m. She's panicking. Both had responded. Both were coming. And I was already here with my phone set to record and a directional microphone borrowed from Detective Prescott positioned on my dashboard. Breyer's heels clicked against concrete as she exited her car. She checked her watch, scanning the nearly empty level with visible anxiety. The parking garage smelled like motor oil and rain, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows that made everything look like a crime scene. Desmond's Audi appeared at 9:52 p.m., headlights sweeping across Breyer's face. He parked 2 spaces away from her, stepped out, looked confused. "You said this was urgent," Breyer said immediately, her voice sharp. "The arrests are supposed to happen tomorrow morning." "I didn't call this meeting." Desmond pulled out his phone, showed her the screen. "You texted me to come here." Silence. I watched them both realize simultaneously that someone had orchestrated this, their heads turned scanning the garage for threats. My car's windows were tinted dark enough that they couldn't see me 3 rows back, camera recording microphone capturing every word in crystal clarity. "And now you're both here on my recording about to turn on each other." "Someone set us up," Breyer hissed. "Obviously." Desmond stepped closer, lowering his voice, but not enough. The directional mic picked up everything. "The question is who? The police, her. Does it matter?" Breyer's panic was visible now, her professional composure cracking. "They're arresting us tomorrow. We need to coordinate our stories." "Our stories?" Desmond laughed, harsh and bitter. "There is no our stories anymore. You filed that idiotic HR complaint and put a target on your back. Every email now gets forensic analysis." The HR complaint was to discredit her before trial. Breyer's voice rose, echoing off concrete pillars. "You're the one who left Calder's business card in your desk drawer like some kind of amateur." I pressed record on my backup phone, redundant documentation. Let them keep talking. Let them build the prosecution's case with their own mouths. "Don't you dare try to pin this all on me," Breyer said, stepping into his space. "I kept every text you sent about dosages. Every message discussing timing, concentration symptoms. You think I'd trust you enough not to have insurance?" Desmond's expression shifted. "And I saved every email where you told me to increase the concentration, where you specifically ordered the final dose for October 28th, where you wrote, and I quote, 'Make it lethal this time. No more half measures.' Conspirators are like scorpions in a bottle, eventually they sting each other." The mutual blackmail revelation hung between them like poison gas. They'd each been protecting themselves from the other, documenting conspiracy, while committing conspiracy, building cases against their accomplice, while depending on that same accomplice to succeed. Neither had ever actually trusted the other. "We wanted her dead," Breyer corrected, her voice dropping to something cold and calculated. "Don't pretend your hands are clean when you're the one who contacted Calder, who negotiated the price, who picked up the compound and brought it into our home." "Your sister," Desmond shot back. "You're the one who hated her enough to coordinate this for 8 months. I just wanted the money." "And I needed the money?" Breyer's composure shattered entirely. 300,000 in debt, bankruptcy proceedings starting in January. You think I orchestrated this for fun? There it was. Confession, motive, admission of coordination. All recorded in her own voice with timestamp and GPS coordinates embedded in the metadata. "If you'd just stuck to the plan," Desmond said, pacing now, "instead of filing anonymous complaints and sending defamation emails from your work computer. Those emails were necessary. We needed her discredited professionally before she died, so no one would investigate too carefully." "Well, congratulations. They investigated. They traced everything back to you. And now we're both getting arrested in," he checked his watch, "approximately 10 hours. They stood in silence, the weight of tomorrow's arrest settling over them like a shroud. I could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. Who would flip first? Who would cooperate with prosecutors? Who would throw the other under the bus to save themselves? The answer clearly was both. "I have a lawyer," Breyer said finally. "So do I. Mine's better. We'll see." They turned away from each other, heading toward their respective cars. The meeting had lasted 28 minutes. 28 minutes of complete oral history, Desmond contacting Calder Breyer, coordinating timing their joint decision to escalate to lethal dosage, their plan to split the insurance payout and property assets. Every detail I'd already documented now confirmed in their own voices. 30 minutes, two conspirators, one complete confession recorded in stereo. I waited until both cars exited the garage before ending the recording. 32 minutes, 17 seconds of admissible evidence. I uploaded it immediately to encrypted cloud storage, then forwarded it to Detective Prescott with a text message, "Exhibit A conspiracy falls apart." Her response came back within 90 seconds. "How did you get this?" Me anonymous tip brought them together. They did the rest themselves. Detective Prescott, that recording is prosecutorial gold. I was pulling out of the parking garage when she called. "Mrs. Whitfield, there's something you need to prepare for." Her voice carried a weight I recognized. "Your father called me this evening. He has something to give you, something he's been hiding since February. He wants to see you tonight." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Vernon. My father, who'd sat silent through every family dinner, who'd watched with engineer's precision while his daughters destroyed each other, who'd said nothing when I'd been hospitalized 3 times. "What does he have?" He wouldn't tell me over the phone. "But Mrs. Whitfield, whatever it is, he's kept it for 9 months. That means it's significant." And whatever my father had been hiding for 9 months was about to change everything. My father sat alone in his darkened living room, a small USB drive on the coffee table between us, like a confession waiting to be heard. I'd driven straight from the parking garage to my childhood home, the house where Briar and I had grown up sharing a bedroom and fighting over toys and learning to braid each other's hair. Vernon had texted me the address as if I might have forgotten. The porch light was on, every other window dark. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. 62 years of civil engineering precision, of calculating load tolerances and structural integrity, and now his hands shook as he gestured toward the USB drive. "I installed cameras after the Johnsons got burglarized," he said without preamble. "Last November. Discrete system. Your mother doesn't even know they're there. I never thought I'd catch this." The USB drive was labeled in his precise handwriting, "Security Backup February 2022. "How long have you had this, Dad?" His jaw worked. "Since February 3rd, the day after your first hospitalization. I've watched my family destroy itself for 9 months because I was too much of a coward to show anyone." 9 months. He'd had evidence since my first poisoning. Before April, before June, before the near-lethal dose in October that would have killed me if I hadn't switched the cups. "Why now?" My voice was flat. "Because tomorrow they're arresting your husband and your sister, and I can't carry this anymore." He pushed the USB drive across the coffee table toward me. "And because if I don't give this to you now, I'm complicit. Not just silent, actively complicit." I picked up the drive. It was lighter than it should be given what it contained. Evidence, truth, betrayal documented in HD. "Your mother's at a friend's house," Vernon said. "Visiting Briar, planning her defense testimony. She doesn't know I called you." Of course she was with Briar, protecting her favored daughter, planning to testify that I was unstable, that I'd always been dramatic, that surely this was all a terrible misunderstanding. "Can I see it?" Vernon pulled his laptop from the side table, already open, already queued. His hands shook as he plugged in the USB drive. The file directory appeared, dozens of dated folders, security camera archives organized by his engineer's precision. He clicked on February 1st, 2022, 7:43 p.m. The footage was crystal clear. Our family dining room from an angle I'd never noticed, the security camera hidden in a bookshelf pointing toward the kitchen doorway. There was audio. The timestamp ran in the corner, February 1st, 2022, 1943:17. I watched my mother set the table, watched Vernon arranging wine glasses, watched myself enter the frame laughing at something someone had said off camera. Then Briar walked into the kitchen. "What do you owe a father who had proof of your attempted murder and chose silence?" My mother's voice called from another room. I remembered this. She'd gotten a phone call from her book club. Celeste left the kitchen. Briar was alone for maybe 15 seconds. She pulled a small vial from her purse. Clear liquid. No label. She glanced toward the doorway where my mother had disappeared, then poured the contents into my wine glass. the one with the small chip on the rim that I'd always claimed as mine. She knew which one was mine. She stirred it with her finger, dried her finger on a dish towel, set the vial back in her purse. All of it captured in high-definition video with timestamp and audio. And in the background, partially visible through the dining room doorway, standing in the hallway where he had a clear view of everything, Desmond. My husband. Watching. Doing nothing. That's February 1st, I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. I was hospitalized the next morning with severe stomach pains. I know, Vernon's voice cracked. I watched this footage on February 3rd trying to understand why you got so sick at our house. I thought maybe the food had gone bad. I checked everything, and then I found this. Look, I pointed at the screen. In the background, that's Desmond. He's watching her do it. Vernon nodded. He knew from the beginning. First dose, first attempt. He was part of it. The footage continued. Briar returned to meal preparation like nothing had happened. My mother came back, resumed setting the table. I entered the kitchen, picked up my wine glass, the poisoned one, and took a sip while chatting with Briar about work. 24 hours later, I'd been in the ER with gastric distress so severe they'd considered admitting me. I stopped the video. You watched me get poisoned 2 more times, April, June, and said nothing. I told myself I'd misunderstood. That it was medication she was adding because you'd asked her to. That there was an explanation. Vernon's hands covered his face. I chose your mother's happiness over your safety. I have to live with that. Family is supposed to be a safety net. Ours was a trapdoor, and my father had been holding the lever. But you know now, I said. You've known since February. April happened, June happened, October almost happened, and you stayed silent. Yes. The word was barely a whisper. Why? Because I'm a coward. He looked up at me, tears on a face I'd never seen cry. Because I couldn't destroy your mother's world. Because I kept hoping I was wrong, that the next hospitalization wouldn't happen, that somehow this family would survive. And every day I didn't speak became another day of guilt I couldn't carry. I copied the file to my phone, sent it to Detective Prescott, sent it to Saskia, sent it to my own encrypted backup. Are you certain you want your mother to see this? Vernon asked. Because once she does, she'll never recover. The daughter she raised, the family she believed in, it all ends when you press play. I took the USB drive and stood. Mom needs to see the truth, Dad, even if it destroys her. He nodded slowly, accepting judgment. As I reached the door, my phone buzzed. Detective Prescott. Arrests executed at 6 a.m. tomorrow, November 29th. Both in custody. Your testimony is scheduled for December 1st. Be ready. Chapter 5 would begin with the moment I'd been building toward for 9 months. Dr. Sutton's office felt different this time, not diagnostic but testimonial. Each word she spoke waited for a courtroom. The arrests had happened exactly as scheduled. November 29th, 6 a.m., both Desmond and Briar taken into custody without incident. I'd watched the news coverage from my apartment, 2 separate patrol cars, 2 sets of handcuffs, 2 mugshots that would be public record forever. Now, one day before my scheduled testimony, I sat across from Dr. Sutton as she prepared to translate 9 months of medical analysis into language a jury could understand. This report will withstand any defense challenge, she said, sliding a bound document across her desk. The science is unambiguous. I opened it. 87 pages of toxicological analysis, chemical breakdowns, peer-reviewed citations, and expert conclusions. Every finding documented with the precision that had defined her 20-year career. 4 incidents, 9 months, 16-fold escalation. I said, reading the executive summary. Dr. Sutton nodded. February through October. RT-47 compound detected in all blood samples with identical molecular signature. Concentration progression from 0.3 milligrams to 4.8 milligrams. Systematic poisoning with clear intent to kill. She pulled up a detailed chart on her computer screen showing the chemical analysis overlaid with my hospitalization dates. February 2nd, severe gastric distress. April 1st, neurological symptoms. June 3rd, cardiac involvement. October 28th, the dose that would have been lethal if consumed. The pattern was undeniable, scientific, irrefutable. Actually, Dr. Sutton said, her voice shifting slightly. I need to show you something. The advanced hair follicle analysis we ran last week revealed something we missed initially. She clicked through to a secondary report. March 23, 2022. Trace RT47 metabolites detected in follicle sample from that growth period. Concentration approximately 0.15 milligrams, too low to cause clinical symptoms. I stared at the data. March. I didn't get sick in March. I thought I'd skipped a month. They tried, Dr. Sutton said quietly. The delivery failed or you didn't consume enough of whatever they'd dosed. But the intent was there. The compound entered your system, just not in sufficient quantity to hospitalize you. Point 0.3, point 0.7, 1.2, 4.8, and now a ghost dose in March we never even knew existed. 5 times. I said the number settling like ice in my chest. They tried to kill me 5 times in 10 months. Yes, Dr. Sutton closed the file. Which establishes pattern beyond any reasonable doubt. This wasn't impulsive, this wasn't opportunistic. This was systematic attempted murder with escalating dosages based on your survival of previous attempts. 5 documented poisoning incidents. 5 times my husband and my sister had calculated how much toxin my body could process before shutting down. 5 times they'd waited to see if I'd die, then adjusted their formula when I survived. The defense will argue coincidence, Dr. Sutton said, already anticipating courtroom challenges. They'll suggest environmental exposure, accidental contamination, anything to create doubt. But RT47 isn't found in nature. It isn't in household products. It requires deliberate procurement from illegal pharmaceutical sources, which your husband's transaction with Dr. Calder establishes beyond dispute. She handed me a summary document, courtroom-ready language stripped of jargon. I'll testify to 3 core conclusions. 1. The compound is RT47, an experimental neurotoxin. 2. The molecular signature is identical across 5 separate incidents spanning 10 months. 3. The October concentration was immediately lethal death within 36 hours if consumed. 3 conclusions that would send my husband and sister to prison. How will you handle cross-examination? I asked. By sticking to science. Dr. Sutton's expression hardened. Chemistry doesn't care about family. Molecules don't lie. The defense can question my credentials, my methodology, my conclusions, but they can't change the chemical fingerprint. RT47 has a signature as distinctive as DNA. It was in your blood 4 times. It was in your hair follicles 5 times. And it was in your sister's blood when she drank the cup meant for you. Science doesn't care about family. Chemistry doesn't negotiate with hope. The molecules told a story no one could deny. Dr. Sutton leaned back her clinical mask, slipping just enough to show concern. Mrs. Whitfield, I need to warn you about something. With arrests made and charges filed, if either defendant makes bail before trial, they have nothing left to lose. A public poisoning becomes possible. The shift from courtroom preparation to immediate danger was jarring. You think they'd try again with arrests on record? I think they poisoned you 5 times across 10 months while living with you. Rationality left this equation long ago. She pulled up a different file: incident reports, toxicology case studies, behavioral patterns of poisoners facing prosecution. 43% of arrested poisoners attempt a second attack on the same victim if given opportunity. The psychology is desperation. If you're dead, you can't testify. If you can't testify, the case weakens. I'm scheduled to testify tomorrow, December 1st, which is why you need to be extremely careful. No food or drink you haven't personally prepared. No contact with either defendant. No situations where someone else controls what you consume. Dr. Sutton's voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen this pattern play out before. This case has kept me awake at night. I've testified in 14 poisoning cases over 20 years. None have been this prolonged, this calculated, this familial. The clinical veneer had cracked completely. I was looking at a woman who'd watched me survive something that should have killed me, who'd spent weeks analyzing the chemical proof of my husband's betrayal, who'd documented with scientific precision exactly how my family had tried to erase me. Thank you, I said, for everything. She nodded, once precise and final. As I left, Vanderbilt Quinn called. Breyer's attorney filed an emergency bail hearing for tomorrow morning, December 1st, the same day as your testimony. Her voice was tight with worry. Saskia says it's a tactic to delay the trial, but, Alara, if the judge grants bail, she could be free within hours of my testimony. The coffee cup sat in front of me again. Same elegant table, same calculated smiles, but this time Breyer wore a GPS ankle monitor beneath her designer jeans. The bail hearing had taken 47 minutes. Judge Morrison had set bail at $500,000 each, citing no prior criminal record, despite the severity of charges. Breyer's attorney had written the check by 9:47 a.m., Desmond's by 10:02 a.m. By 11:15, I'd received a text from my mother. Emergency family brunch at Breyer's. Please come. We need to heal before tomorrow. Before tomorrow. Before my testimony. They'd made bail specifically for this. One last attempt before I testified. I'd called Saskia immediately. She'd been unequivocal. Don't go. It's a trap. They have nothing to lose. But I'd gone anyway. With my backup phone recording in my jacket pocket. With Saskia on silent speed dial. With every piece of evidence I'd gathered over 9 months building toward this moment. Breyer opened her front door at 11:50 a.m. with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The GPS monitor was visible if you knew to look for it, a bulge above her left ankle beeping softly every few minutes, to confirm she hadn't left her court-approved radius. I know the timing seems strange, she said, ushering me inside, but family is family. We need to heal before tomorrow's proceedings. Proceedings. As if attempted murder charges were a scheduling conflict. Celeste sat in the living room, her face carrying the weight of someone caught between daughters. She stood when I entered, pulling me into a hug that felt desperate. Elara, sweetheart, you look exhausted. Let us take care of you today. I'd made myself look exhausted deliberately. Dark circles enhanced with makeup, hair unwashed, clothes rumpled. I needed them to see weakness, to believe I was breaking, to feel confident enough to slip. Desmond appeared from the kitchen carrying a tray of coffee cups. He'd aged since the arrest. New lines around his eyes, hands less steady than before. But his smile was the same. That calculated, rehearsed smile he'd perfected over 3 years of marriage. I made it exactly how you like it, he said, setting a cup before me. Please, Elara, peace offering. The cup was white porcelain with a gold rim, the same set as before, the same elegant presentation, the same metallic scent rising with the steam, faint chemical wrong. How many times can you sit at the same table, stare at the same cup, and choose between trust and survival? I didn't touch it. Not yet. I needed them talking first. Needed the recording to capture context, motive, intent. Tell me why this brunch is so important, I said, my voice deliberately weak. Why today, specifically? Breyer settled into the chair across from me, her ankle monitor beeping once. Because tomorrow you're scheduled to testify, and I wanted you to hear the truth from me first. Everything you think happened, it's not what it looks like. What does it look like? Like your husband and sister tried to kill you, she said, the words coming out with practiced innocence. But Elara, you've been under so much stress. The hospitalizations, the paranoia, the accusations, we're worried about your mental state. The HR complaint script. The defamation email narrative. She was still following the playbook, even with criminal charges filed. Celeste leaned forward, her maternal instinct weaponized without understanding. Your sister has been through so much with these arrests. Can't you just drink the coffee and talk like adults? Show her you're willing to move past this. My mother was pressuring me to drink poison. Not maliciously, she didn't know. But the effect was the same. I lifted the cup slowly, watching their faces. Desmond's eyes tracked the movement with barely concealed intensity. Breyer's breathing had changed shallow and quick. Celeste looked relieved, thinking I was finally being reasonable. The cup reached my lips. Steam warmed my face. The metallic scent intensified. I set it back down untouched. Why does it smell wrong? I asked. Breyer's composure cracked fractionally. It doesn't smell wrong. It's just coffee. French roast. You're being paranoid again. Again, I repeated. Like in February, April, June, October. Desmond's hand tightened on his own cup. Elara, we're trying to... Trying to what? I kept my voice weak, broken. Help me. Take care of me. Make sure I'm too sick to testify tomorrow. Breyer stood abruptly, her chair scraping against hardwood. The GPS monitor beeped twice in rapid succession, movement alert. Just drink it, Elara. Tomorrow's testimony doesn't happen if you're too sick to show up. The room went silent except for the soft beeping of her ankle monitor. Desmond's face went white. "Briar, shut up!" But it was too late. The words were out, recorded, witnessed. Celeste's coffee cup slipped from her hands, shattering on the floor. "What?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "What did you just say about tomorrow's testimony?" 10 words. One recording. A mother's denial shattered in real time. Briar's eyes darted between me and Celeste, calculating damage, searching for recovery. "I didn't mean Mom. I just meant that she needs rest before—" "You said she'd be too sick." Celeste's voice was hollow. "You said tomorrow's testimony doesn't happen if she's too sick. You—" Her gaze fell to the untouched coffee cup in front of me, then to Briar, then to Desmond, who couldn't meet her eyes. I pulled my phone from my jacket pocket, backup recording still active. "I need to call Detective Prescott." "No." Briar reached across the table, her hand closing over mine. The GPS monitor beeped its location alert. "Alara, please. Mom, tell her this is family. We don't call the police on family." But Celeste stood abruptly, knocking over her chair. Coffee spilled across the elegant tablecloth, spreading like evidence neither of them could contain anymore. "You were trying to—" She couldn't finish the sentence, eyes locked on the untouched cup in front of me, then back to Briar, her youngest daughter, her favorite, attempting murder in front of her. And this time there was nowhere left to hide the truth. I pressed dial on my phone under the table as Briar and Desmond turned on each other, their carefully constructed conspiracy collapsing into mutual accusation. Celeste stood frozen, one hand covering her mouth, staring at the untouched coffee cup in front of me, like it was evidence she'd been too blind to see for 10 months. Her youngest daughter, her favorite, caught attempting murder in real time. "Mom, I can explain," Briar started. But Desmond cut her off, his own panic overriding caution. "Don't say anything, she's recording. Look at her phone, she's been recording this whole time." Too late. They'd already said enough, but fear made people reckless. "You kept receipts for the RT-47, Briar shrieked, turning on him completely. "You left Calder's business card where anyone could find it if you'd just been careful." "Careful?" Desmond's voice cracked. "You filed that idiotic HR complaint from your work computer. You scheduled this brunch specifically to stop her testimony tomorrow. You're the one who couldn't wait." Every word captured, every admission documented. RT-47, Calder, the HR complaint, tomorrow's testimony. The entire conspiracy laid bare in their panicked argument. Celeste sank back into her chair, her face ashen. "You were really trying to... both of you. For how long?" "February," I said quietly. "The first attempt was February 1st, 2024. You were there, Mom. You saw Briar in the kitchen. You just didn't know what you were seeing." My mother's hands began to shake. 12 minutes from phone call to handcuffs. That's how fast 9 months of conspiracy collapsed into custody. Detective Prescott arrived with 2 patrol cars at 12:34 p.m. She walked into Briar's dining room to find all 4 of us still at the table, me with my phone recording Celeste in shock, and Briar and Desmond frozen in the aftermath of their admission. "Don't move. Don't speak," Detective Prescott said, her voice carrying absolute authority. "Desmond Whitfield, Briar Harrington, you're both under arrest for violating bail conditions, attempted contact with a protected witness. And based on what Mrs. Whitfield's attorney just played for me over the phone, you're also being charged with additional counts of attempted murder." Briar's GPS monitor beeped as officers approached. "We didn't violate anything. This is a family gathering. You orchestrated a meeting with the prosecution's primary witness hours before her scheduled testimony, served her a beverage we'll be testing for RT-47 compound, and explicitly stated on recording that tomorrow's testimony wouldn't happen if she was too sick to attend." Detective Prescott pulled out handcuffs. "That's witness tampering, attempted murder, and violation of a no-contact order you should never have had the opportunity to break." The coffee cup went into an evidence bag. My backup phone into another. The recording uploaded to 3 separate law enforcement servers before Briar and Desmond were even in the patrol cars. Celeste watched her daughter being led away in handcuffs and said nothing. 2 days later, December 3rd. I stood in my former home, the townhouse I'd shared with Desmond for 3 years, watching forensic teams methodically dismantle his home office. Detective Prescott had secured an expanded search warrant based on the brunch recording. They were looking for physical evidence to complement the digital trail. They found it in the locked bottom drawer of his desk beneath a false bottom compartment an engineer had installed with precision. 3 sealed vials of clear liquid. RT-47 compound later confirmed by Dr. Sutton's laboratory analysis. And a handwritten notebook. Detective Prescott brought it to me already sealed in an evidence bag, but visible through the clear plastic. Black leather binding. Desmond's precise engineering handwriting filling page after page. He documented everything, she said, her voice tight. Doses symptoms escalation strategy. It's premeditation in his own handwriting. I read through the plastic. February 2nd, 2022, 0.3 milligrams administered via wine glass. Symptoms severe gastric distress, vomiting, hospitalized 6 hours. Survived. Increase next attempt. April 1st, 2022, 0.7 milligrams administered via tea. Symptoms dizziness, tremors, vision, problems. Hospitalized 24 hours. Still functional next day. Building tolerance. Increase again. June 3rd, 2022, 1.2 milligrams administered via breakfast juice. Symptoms cardiac arrhythmia, multi-organ stress, hospitalized 72 hours, heart rate dropped to 42 beats per minute, close call, need 4 times this dose for certainty. Scientists keep lab notebooks, engineers keep project logs, murderers apparently keep dosing journals. I turned the page. October 28th, 2022. 4.8 milligrams prepared for morning coffee. Final dose. No recovery possible. Life insurance claim filed within 48 hours of death. Property transfer documents ready for signature. Breyer coordinates memorial service while I handle estate paperwork. October 28th. I said, my voice sounding distant. Final dose. No recovery possible. He knew it would kill me. Detective Prescott nodded grimly. And he wrote it down 2 days before the actual attempt. Planned, calculated, documented. The notebook was cross-referenced with other documents in the same drawer. The life insurance policy listing me as insured for over $2 million. The property transfer papers with my signature line, blank financial statements, highlighting Breyer's debt situation and email printouts between Desmond and Breyer discussing timeline acceleration and final implementation. Mrs. Whitfield, this notebook makes our case ironclad, Detective Prescott said. Defense attorneys can't argue around a murder manual, especially one that includes post-mortem asset division planning. She photographed every page, cataloged every vial, documented the false bottom drawer construction. By the time forensics finished, they'd collected 47 pieces of physical evidence from Desmond's home office alone. 47 pieces that corroborated everything I'd already provided: the toxicology reports, the digital sabotage evidence, the neighbor's security footage, the parking garage confession, the brunch recording. The case wasn't just strong, it was overwhelming. Saskia called that evening with the trial schedule. Prosecution is moving forward immediately. Preliminary hearing. December 15th, full trial starts January 9th, 2025. She paused, and I heard papers shuffling. Alara, your mother contacted me this afternoon. She wants to testify for the prosecution. The woman who'd defended Breyer for months was ready to bury her. The courtroom smelled like old wood and new fear. I sat in the front row of the gallery as Saskia Redmond stood to deliver her opening statement, and for the first time since October, I wasn't the one fighting to prove I'd been poisoned. 12 jurors would do that for me now. Celeste's decision to testify for the prosecution had shocked everyone. She'd spent weeks reviewing financial documents, discovering the depth of Breyer's betrayal, and finally accepting what her favored daughter had become. But that testimony wouldn't come until later. First, the prosecution had to build the foundation. Saskia clicked a remote. The screen behind her displayed my hospital photo from October, bald, hollow-eyed, unrecognizable. Several jurors winced. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a case about greed disguised as love. Saskia said, her voice clear and measured. The evidence will show that Desmond Whitfield and Breyer Harrington systematically poisoned Alara Whitfield with RT-47 compound over 10 months, bringing her to the edge of death multiple times, all to steal a major business contract, life insurance proceeds, and jointly owned assets worth over $7 million. She advanced the slides. My February hospital admission, April, June, each one showing progressive physical deterioration. The defendant didn't use a gun or a knife. He used breakfast, coffee, affection, the most intimate weapons a spouse can wield. Desmond sat at the defense table in a navy suit I'd helped him pick out 2 years ago for a sales conference in Chicago. I remembered standing in the department store running my hand down the sleeve laughing when he complained about the price. Now that same suit hung on a frame 20 pounds lighter, and I wondered if prison food had already started to hollow him out, or if guilt had an appetite too. He wouldn't look at me. Breyer, seated at a separate defense table with her own attorney, kept her eyes fixed on her hands. Dr. Sutton took the stand first, her credentials established with clinical precision. Saskia walked her through the toxicology analysis with methodical clarity. Dr. Sutton, can you explain what RT-47 is? It's an experimental neurotoxin originally developed for pharmaceutical pain research. Dr. Sutton said, her voice carrying the authority of 20 years' expertise. It was never approved for human use due to severe systemic effects. In controlled doses, it causes gastrointestinal distress and neurological symptoms. In higher concentrations, multi-organ failure within 48 hours. And you detected this compound in Mrs. Whitfield's blood samples. 5 separate incidents spanning 10 months. February, March, April, June, and October 2022. The molecular signature was identical across all samples, same compound, same source. The concentration escalated from 0.3 milligrams in February to 4.8 milligrams in October. What does that escalation indicate? Systematic poisoning with deliberate dose adjustment based on the victim's survival of previous attempts. The October concentration was immediately lethal. If Mrs. Whitfield had consumed it, death would have occurred within 36 hours. The defense attorney for Desmond stood for cross-examination. Dr. Sutton, isn't it possible Mrs. Whitfield was exposed to arsenic through old paint or contaminated water? Dr. Sutton adjusted her glasses. No. The blood concentration levels, the metabolite ratios, and the temporal pattern of acute exposures followed by partial recovery are inconsistent with environmental exposure. This was deliberate, repeated oral administration of soluble compounds. How can you be certain? Because environmental arsenic doesn't pause on weekends when the defendant was traveling, then resume Monday morning. Mrs. Whitfield's symptom diary shows her worst episodes aligned precisely with mornings after her husband prepared breakfast. That's not environmental, that's intentional. I thought about all the true crime podcasts I'd consumed over the years, never imagining I'd become an episode. Would my story be titled The Arsenic Wife or Poison Trust? Would listeners shake their heads and wonder how I didn't see it sooner? The thought made me nauseous, or maybe that was just courtroom anxiety manifesting in my still recovering digestive system. Detective Prescott presented the investigation timeline next, methodically walking the jury through each piece of evidence. Irene Holbrook's security footage showing Desmond's late-night visits to Breyer's house 2 to 3 days before each hospitalization. Vernon's hidden camera capturing Breyer spiking my wineglass on February 1st. The IP forensics linking 17 defamation emails to Breyer's work computer. Dr. Raymond Calder's sales ledger documenting the RT-47 purchase. Then Saskia presented the integrated package, all evidence streams displayed simultaneously on multiple screens. Surveillance footage synced with my symptom diary. Digital receipts matching poison purchases to symptom spikes. The parking garage confession recording. Desmond's handwritten dosing notebook with entries like, October 28th, final dose, no recovery possible. The jury saw the pattern from every angle at once. Scientific, digital, financial, testimonial. The evidence web was so comprehensive that reasonable doubt seemed impossible. Desmond remained expressionless throughout. Breyer looked increasingly panicked, whispering frantically to her attorney during breaks. Court adjourned at 4:47 p.m. Outside, I saw Celeste sitting alone on a bench in the courthouse hallway, looking devastated. We made brief eye contact but didn't speak. What was there to say? Her youngest daughter was on trial for trying to murder me, and she'd just watched 2 days of evidence proving it beyond doubt. That evening, Saskia called. Elara, I need to give you advance notice of a development. Her voice was carefully neutral. Your mother contacted me this afternoon. I froze, phone pressed to my ear. Celeste, what did she want? She wants to testify for the prosecution. The words didn't make sense. I'd seen Celeste in the courtroom gallery, her face a mask of maternal anguish. That's not possible. She's been defending Breyer since the arrest. She was, Saskia said carefully, until she hired a forensic accountant to review her own finances after seeing Vernon's security footage. Alara Breyer's been using her mother's identity to secure loans for years. Celeste just discovered she's on the hook for $347,000 in debt she never authorized. She's not defending her daughter anymore. I sat down slowly, the weight of this new betrayal settling over me. Breyer hadn't just tried to kill me for money. She'd been systematically destroying our mother financially for years. When does she testify? Tomorrow afternoon. And Alara, I need you to prepare yourself. This trial is about to get even more complicated. Celeste just discovered she's on the hook for $347,000 in debt she never authorized. When Saskia called her to the stand the next morning, I watched the transformation, a mother's loyalty, crumbling under the weight of financial ruin. Celeste's hands trembled as she placed them on the witness Bible. Her voice, usually so composed, cracked on the oath. I do. Saskia approached gently. Mrs. Harrington, when did you first learn about the loan applications bearing your signature? Yesterday. Celeste's eyes found Breyer at the defense table. When Detective Prescott showed me the documents during the lunch recess. And were those signatures yours? No. The word came out broken. My daughter forged my name 23 times, 23 separate applications across 14 financial institutions. She stole my identity while I slept under the same roof. Breyer's attorney objected relevance, but Judge Carmichael overruled. The financial motive went directly to premeditation. Saskia presented the loan documents one by one. Each signature looked perfect to the untrained eye, but forensic analysis revealed microscopic tremors, inconsistent with Celeste's natural hand. Breyer had practiced for months. The total fraudulent debt attributed to your name, what is it? $347,218. Celeste's composure shattered. My credit score dropped 400 points overnight. I can't even qualify for a grocery store card anymore. I sat in the gallery watching this woman who'd enabled my sister's cruelty for years finally confront the monster she'd raised. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt desperately sad. Saskia softened her tone. Mrs. Harrington, why did your daughter need this money? To fund the real estate partnership with Desmond Whitfield. Celeste looked at me for the first time. The one designed to edge Alara out of her own company. Breyer couldn't secure legitimate funding because of her prior bankruptcy, so she used me. The jury leaned forward. This wasn't just about poison anymore, it was about systematic exploitation on every level. Then Saskia asked the question that broke her. Did Breyer ever express remorse for what she did to you? Celeste's face crumpled. No. When I confronted her yesterday, she said I was collateral damage, that I should be grateful she only ruined my credit instead of she couldn't finish. How many people had my sister destroyed before someone finally stopped her? The courtroom went silent as Celeste turned toward me, tears streaming. Alara, I am so sorry. I knew Breyer was difficult, but I never imagined she was capable of this. Of poisoning you, of stealing from me, of manipulating everyone who loved her. I should have protected you, and instead, I enabled her. I am so sorry. I nodded once. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was acknowledgement. After Celeste's testimony, the defense presented their case character witnesses who praised Desmond's charity work experts who questioned the toxicology timeline attempts to paint me as a vindictive wife fabricating evidence. But Saskia's cross-examination dismantled each argument with surgical precision. The confession recording alone was insurmountable. Closing arguments consumed the afternoon of December 21st. Saskia walked the jury through the timeline, one final time, 5 deliberate poisoning incidents, across 10 months, each one carefully documented in Breyer's own handwriting. The RT-47 compound, purchased under a false business license. The surveillance footage showing Breyer entering my kitchen on October 28th. Desmond's confession on tape admitting to doses and timing. This wasn't a crime of passion, Saskia concluded. This was attempted murder executed with cold, methodical planning. They tried to kill Alara Whitfield slowly enough that no one would notice. They almost succeeded. The jury retired at 4:17 p.m. I sat in the victim witness room with Detective Prescott watching the clock. Waiting felt like drowning. 3 hours later at 7:22 p.m., the jury sent word they'd reached a verdict. The courtroom reconvened at 7:40 p.m. I took my seat directly behind Saskia, close enough to see Desmond's jaw clench when the jury foreman stood. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree against Alara Whitfield, how do you find guilty? The word echoed through the chamber. Desmond's mother gasped. Breyer remained perfectly still. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find guilty? One by one, all 15 counts guilty. 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 Assault with a deadly weapon. Forgery. Identity theft. Wire fraud. Every charge, every count guilty. Every. Judge Carmichael ordered the defendants remanded without bail pending sentencing. 2 bailiffs approached the defense table with handcuffs. Breyer's composure finally cracked when the steel cuffs clicked around her wrists. She turned to Celeste one last time. "I'm sorry, Mom. I never meant to hurt you." Not me. Not the woman she'd poisoned 5 times. Her mother. The woman whose identity she'd stolen. Celeste looked away. As the bailiffs led them toward the holding cells, Desmond met my eyes across the courtroom. No apology, no remorse, just cold calculation even in defeat. He mouthed 2 words I couldn't quite decipher before disappearing through the security door. Saskia hugged me as the courtroom emptied. "Sentencing is scheduled for January 12th. You did it, Alara." I nodded, numb with relief and exhaustion. 10 months of poisoning, 4 months of evidence gathering, 3 weeks of trial. It was finally over. That night, Saskia called me at 11:47 p.m. "You need to see something. I just received the pre-sentencing investigation report from the probation office." "What is it?" 3 women came forward after seeing news coverage of the trial. They all dated Desmond before you. All 3 experienced unexplained illnesses during their relationships with him, symptoms consistent with low-level poisoning. The investigator found medical records dating back 7 years. My blood turned to ice. "How many people has he done this to?" "We don't know yet," Saskia said quietly. "But Alara, you might not have been his first victim. You might have been his 4th. Saskia sent me the files 2 days later. 3 women, 3 cities, 7 years of medical records documenting unexplained neurological symptoms during relationships with Desmond. Each woman had been financially successful, a portfolio manager, a software executive, a real estate attorney. Each had experienced tremors, nausea, cognitive fog. Each had ended the relationship when their savings accounts mysteriously dwindled despite careful budgeting. Desmond hadn't started with attempted murder. He'd escalated to it. The pattern was undeniable. Target women with assets introduced subtle illness as control-drain resources while they were too sick to notice, discard them before anyone connected the dots. I'd been different only because I'd married him, giving him legal access, and 10 months to perfect his method. The other women had escaped with their lives because they'd left sooner. I wasn't his first victim. I was his most ambitious project. On January 13th, I walked into Judge Morrison's courtroom for the last time. Desmond and Breyer sat at the defense table in orange jumpsuits, wrists shackled. Breyer looked diminished, hollow. Desmond looked exactly as he always had, composed, calculating, already planning his next move. Judge Morrison invited me to deliver my victim impact statement. I'd written 17 drafts. In the end, I spoke from memory. For 73 days, I thought I was dying of a disease I couldn't name. You did that. Every morning, you handed me poisoned coffee and calculated my worth in dollars. You watched me lose my hair, my balance, my ability to walk across a room without collapsing. You measured my suffering in profit margins. I looked directly at Desmond. He met my eyes with that same flat assessment he'd used when selecting wine or negotiating contracts. I was still just a variable in his equations. But here's what you didn't calculate: I kept records. I trusted my instincts when everyone told me I was imagining things. I gathered evidence while you thought I was too weak to fight back. You underestimated me, and that mistake cost you everything. Saskia presented the evidence of the three prior victims. Judge Morrison's expression darkened as he reviewed the decade-long pattern. Desmond hadn't just attempted murder once. He'd been systematically exploiting and poisoning women since 2015. Mr. Whitfield, Judge Morrison's voice carried the weight of granite. You are a serial predator who weaponized intimacy and trust. The court sentences you to 40 years in state prison without possibility of parole for 15 years. Desmond's jaw tightened, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him since the arrest. Ms. Harrington, you enabled and participated in attempted murder. The court sentences you to 30 years eligible for parole after 12. Breyer's composure finally shattered. She turned to look at me as the bailiffs approached, mouth opening as if to speak, then closing again. What apology could possibly matter now? As they led Desmond away, he glanced back once. I felt nothing. No rage, no satisfaction, no lingering connection. He was a stranger now, someone I'd never really known, and I was free. Late January brought unexpected visitors. Vernon and Celeste appeared at my new apartment on a Sunday afternoon, Celeste carrying a casserole with hands that trembled. I don't expect forgiveness, Celeste said, setting the dish on my counter. I just needed you to know I see what I enabled. I see it now. Vernon squeezed my shoulder gently. You survived something unimaginable. That takes strength we never taught you. You found it yourself. We sat in uncomfortable silence drinking tea. The family structure we'd known was shattered beyond repair, but civility remained. Celeste would spend years unpacking her role in creating the daughter who'd betrayed her. Vernon would carry guilt for not seeing the signs. I would heal in ways they couldn't participate in. But we could sit together for an hour, and that was something. My hands didn't shake anymore when I held a mug 3 months ago. The tremors made it impossible to grip anything, and now steady fingers felt like a miracle I'd forgotten to celebrate. 2 days later, Quinn's email appeared in my inbox. Stratford renewal confirmed. They want you leading the expanded regional rollout. Your instincts saved more than your life. They delivered the most successful campaign launch in company history. When can you start? My career had survived the scandal. The marketing instincts that detected poisoning in my marriage had translated to detecting opportunity in market data. Stratford Westfield didn't care about my personal disaster. They cared that I'd been right when everyone else said I was paranoid. Trust your data, even when the data is your own body screaming warnings. On January 31st, I sat at my desk reviewing old journal entries from early 2022. One line caught my attention. I think I'm just stressed. Desmond says I need to relax more. How many times had I ignored my body's warnings, trusted his concern over my instincts? How many women had Desmond calculated before me, measuring love in asset columns and risk-reward ratios? I deleted that entry permanently. In its place, I typed one final line: intuition is data. It saved my life. That evening, I stood on my balcony holding coffee. I'd made myself French press medium roast cream, but no sugar. The ritual Desmond had weaponized for 10 months now belonged to me again. The coffee tasted like mornings should taste, warm, bitter mine. Winter sun warmed my face. My hair had grown back in soft waves, darker than before, but healthy. The woman who'd lain bald and trembling in a hospital bed 4 months ago felt like someone from another lifetime, someone weaker, someone who'd believed love meant ignoring red flags. I wasn't her anymore. I was whoever I decided to become next, and that choice was entirely mine. No poison, no surveillance, no one calculating my worth while handing me coffee laced with RT-47. Just me, my instincts, and a future I'd reclaimed one documented symptom at a time. The city lights began flickering on across Nashville's skyline. Somewhere in a maximum security prison, Desmond was learning what it meant to lose control. Somewhere in another facility, Breyer was facing the consequences of loyalty to a monster. And here on this balcony, I was finally free to stop thinking about them at all. I raised my coffee mug to the sunset, a private toast to the woman I'd become, the one who'd trusted her data, the one who'd survived. And to you listening to my story, remember this: the people closest to you should be your safest place, not your greatest danger. Looking back, I ignored every warning sign. I dismissed tremors as stress, hair loss as hormones, dizziness as exhaustion. I chose to believe the people I loved over what my body screamed at me. Don't make my mistake. When your instincts tell you something is wrong, they're protecting you, not being paranoid. I almost paid for that lesson with my life. Trust is sacred, but survival is more sacred. You can love someone and still protect yourself. The lesson I learned through 73 days of systematic betrayal intuition is data. Your body knows when something is wrong before your mind accepts it. God gave us instincts for a reason to survive when love makes us vulnerable. Justice came because I trusted that inner voice more than their lies. If you feel unsafe but everyone says you're imagining it, document everything. Believe yourself first. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. Have you ever had to choose between trusting someone you love and trusting your instincts? Your perspective might help someone else. If you found value here, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And please subscribe to her drama stories if you haven't already. Your support means everything. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your time and attention are precious gifts. One final note: while this story is based on real emotions and experiences, certain details have been fictionalized for storytelling purposes. What matters most is the message that you deserve to trust yourself, protect yourself, and survive.